Is it up there?
I can see like a screenshot of it.
Yeah. So that's actually the live feed.
Oh, that's the live feed? Okay.
Yeah.
So if I click on it, though... Oh, I was trying to see how I share it. But it just kind of goes black.
Huh. Scroll down a little bit. Oh, there it was.
That was just...
Just share
that was
your
just...
name.
Yeah, I think I was just copying the text. If I do like a long press.
Go ahead and scroll down. Yeah, there it is. Go down.
Oh, okay. So just share this.
Yeah.
From here. Okay. Share now.
Your phone.
Oh, because my phone is
It's looping. Yeah.
It's hearing it.
Whoops.
Hey.
Okay, I turned it down.
There.
What the heck?
Hey. I don't.
Better? Is that okay?
I don't have anything.
You don't have anything.
Ho.
Keep going.
Hey. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're ready to have a podcast.
All right.
Let's blow that up a little bit bigger. All right. Hey,
What's up?
we got a podcast going on. Right on, man.
I got you.
You got it?
Yep.
Cool. Here, let me keep this out so I can keep an eye on the hey. Let's drop that down a little bit. Hey.
Check.
Hey. Hey ho, ha, hey ho. Let's just drop that down a little bit. The USB audio. Hey, ha, hey oh. Hopefully that doesn't peak too much. Hey, we're getting it figured out, man. Right on. Welcome to episode number 93 of the motherfucking podcast. This is, of course, the official podcast of the International Power Rock Combo, motherfucking Ruckus from Denver and Chicago, respectively. This is our weekly podcast where we sit down and we shoot the shit with people that we have at least some sort of loose affiliation, friendship, kinship, whatever you might call it with, or just interesting people to sit down and talk with. This week, we have a very, 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 very special guest. Man, I don't even know how to go about completely introducing you.
Where do we start?
I think the best way to start is to say how I know you best, which is as one of the founding members of the Warlock Pinchers, which is a band that influenced us and me a great deal. But you also have since then, because a lot of time has transpired since then, because Warlock Pinchers really stopped officially doing anything in the late 90s, right?
Actually, 1992.
1992 was when you guys were done. You might want to get a little closer to the mic, up in the pop screen.
Yeah.
Just you can move that arm too,
Yeah, I'll go up
lift it up a little bit, and you can. There you go. That most of the episode is going to be making adjustments to.
Okay. Just keep
to
moving it.
Yeah.
Moving it. Okay.
So, so 1992. That's a very long. So even in that case, by the time I discovered you guys, you were already done.
Yeah.
You were already done by that point.
It was pretty short, actually, fairly short-lived thing if you think of it in the terms of then to now.
Right.
You know?
That's amazing that how long was the band actually together?
So it started in about 1987.
Okay.
It's actually at Heritage High School. It was a high school band.
So you guys only made it 5 years?
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
And that was really the founders. There was 8 or more people in it. They made a cassette, and there was 30 cassettes made.
Am I supposed to hit record over here?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. My bad.
That's okay. We'll splice it back in and post. That's great. Gordo, you see what happens when you're not here. Hey, give it up real quick for our guest producer, Ethan Klein, in the booth, helping out and hanging out. Gordo is hobnobbing at some local scene meetup thing right now, but I'm sure he can pull that off the video and post. Gordo's a wizard at that shit, man. All right. Anyway, you were saying Heritage High School.
So it was a high school band. They made a cassette, and there were 30 copies made. And then a bunch of them went to CU Boulder. So specifically Mark and Dan, 3KSK and King Scratchy.
Right.
And so that's where I hooked up with them and was in Boulder. And that's when
Were you a student there at the time?
Yeah. We were all students. We all lived in the same dorm. And so it went from a high school band to a college band, I guess.
Yeah, right.
But then we just instantly started recording and putting out 7-inches and cassette compilations and stuff. Mark Brooks was like a genius at just putting out the stuff. He had been in bands before, like Minus Bill was one of the bands that he was in before, and he started another thing called Treble King. So he was really producing a lot. And I came in as I've always been a marketer. So like
that you were responsible for like all the merchandising stuff and all the
marketing and merchandise. And Mark did most of the flyers, but I did some of the flyers and artwork and stuff. But I came into it as being like a t-shirt maker. Like I taught myself how to make silkscreen t-shirts way back like high school or even earlier. And so we were the band that had like several t-shirt designs. All the young bands, like they scrape up enough money to make a t-shirt. But like since we were making our own stuff, we could make a run of like 5
You just made tons
shirts.
of stuff.
Yeah, and then it just went from there. So it was like, oh, we're the band who's got like 10 t-shirt designs now. And then I started making golf tees and yo-yos and keychains and just all the stupid shit that anything you could put your logo on, basically. Right. Like squeeze bottles, Right. And it was just ludicrous. And people were like, what is this? Like, we had lighters,
And this is like before people could just, you could just go on your computer and put your corporate logo up on anything.
Redbubble or whatever. Yeah, now you can have all that stuff like in a week. But back then it was like you had to have something where you'd have to buy at least 144 of something.
Right.
You get 12 dozen of whatever. So what can
you from like Oriental Trading or something like that.
Yeah. So but you had to buy a lot of something to put your logo on, So you really had to. Then you have like a big pile of stuff that now you got to get rid of it,
Right.
Kind of like putting out a record, right? We got 500 copies of this record. Now what do we do?
Right,
and
exactly.
We're sitting here in a big stack.
Dude,
so
I'm like embarrassed by how long it took us to sell 300 records. Like when we got our reissue printed from Rodeo Star Records, we still haven't sold out of all 300 of the copies that we got made. It's
hard to get rid of a lot of anything.
And then you used to have, I think they still have the same special where it's like 1,000 CDs for $1,000 on disc makers or whatever. It's like, dude, I've still got some CDs for. I think we just sold out of some CDs that we printed in like 2003 or something. You know what I mean? Like just like such a long time ago.
Yeah.
Because that's so much stuff to sell. But at this time, you guys were able to do like super short runs of stuff.
Yeah. And even our first 7-inch, because a lot of the punk rock bands were doing, it's a Xerox 7-inch cover or whatever. Because it's like, cheap punk rock stuff. So we tried to one-up it. So we did Xerox, but then we silk screened on top of it. So it was like a 1-color silk screen, but it was a 2-color single cover.
Oh.
So, but then it also had this kind of tactile thing about it because it was like,
Yeah, you could see the ink on top of it.
Ink on top of a zero. So we had kind of created that look. And then our first album, which we self-released, the records were pretty cheap back then. You could get a record made. It's a couple bucks for the vinyl. But getting a color cover is going to cost like $4 or whatever.
What is the first 7-inch?
So the first 7-inch was called "This Is the Cobbler and He Hates Your Bell Bottoms," and which is funny because there's no song called that. That was just the name of the 7-inch.
Right.
And then it was "James Dean is an Overrated Asshole."
Right.
And then Billy the Scab was on the B-side, and then we had Anthem, I think it was Anthem 3, because on that original cassette there was Anthem 1. It was the Warlock Pinchers Anthem, just a song about the band, you know?
Right.
So we were up, I think we got up to Anthem 5 in the end, because there was Anthem 4 was on Deadly Kung Fu Action.
Right.
Anthem 5 was on Circusized Peanuts.
So where I got introduced to you guys, and I mention Logan, our bass player, I mention his brother Marshall a lot on this, because he's really the one who exposed us to all kinds of alternative music. You know, everything from, you know, classic rock like Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and things like that, all the way to newer metal stuff and alternative rock and the things that were on like 92X at the time, and punk rock and even local bands. And he kind of introduced us to like Pinhead Circus is one of the bands that he introduced us to, and he introduced us to you guys. And I didn't even know you were a local band. I knew that out of everything that he was showing us, you guys stood out in a way that no other band really did. And, you know, so in my mind, I had imagined you guys being this, like, first of all, a much bigger band than you probably were at the time, especially because from what I'm hearing now, you guys were, this was probably 95 when I found you guys. So you guys were long gone. You were 3 years past it, and other stuff was already going on.
Yeah.
That's insane. So
that's crazy.
So what I came in on was there was the double release of the CD was Deadly Kung Fu Action and Pinch a Loaf together. And I actually got in trouble at a DSA summer camp in tech class because I wrote the lyrics to Morrissey Rides a Cock Horse on a balloon and floated it out a window. And I think a teacher came across it, and next thing I know, I'm getting, like, they knew it was me for some reason.
Yeah,
you know
they knew it was you for sure. They're like, oh yeah, easy.
So tell me just a little bit about what it looked like when you guys were at that point in the band recording those albums, and what touring looked like for you guys, and what songwriting looked like, and just kind of what your world was like at that point.
Yeah, so we were all very different people. You know, King Scratchy came from this, he was into like dancehall reggae and hip hop and rap, and I was into, Slayer and pop music and Butthole Surfers, you know?
Okay.
And then Mark was into, I guess what you would now call prog rock and, like rock and keyboard stuff, and then E-rock, and there was the original bass player too, Brian Murphy. Everyone was into totally different stuff. So when we all got together, it's like it was nobody's ideal, like, this is my genre we're creating. It's like everyone just put the stuff that they wanted into the songs,
right?
You know? So I was really just yelling and noisy. Scratchy was really into the lyrics and the back and forth, two MCs, the rhymes, the complex rhymes, and and so it ended up just being like this kind of noisy mess.
But he had that very punk rock affect to his voice too.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah. He was not. He didn't fit in the hip hop genre. You know, the dance hall genre. Like, that was the thing. All the things we liked, we weren't really part of those scenes. It was just stuff that we liked. So when we created it, we just created a whole new thing, you know. And so
I heard nothing like it, and I've heard nothing like it since. Like, nobody has ever done what you guys did.
Yeah, and it's because we didn't really have a reference, and you know Denver, and Denver's much different now too. But there was, there was touring bands came through, but a lot of people skipped us, you know, and we didn't have like. It wasn't DC, it wasn't LA, it wasn't San Francisco. There wasn't this conglomerate of the sound, you know, all these DC bands played together. So we would play at punk shows. We would play at sometimes metal shows. And like, we didn't really fit in anywhere, but like the show was the show, and everyone went to the show, like a small town would be, you know. And so we actually did better in small towns, I think, because everyone just
you were
comes
the
to
only
show.
thing in town.
Yeah. And we go, we played in Boise and Salt Lake City and those kind of places. Like, whatever's happening, if it's a punk show, if it's a metal show, they all go to it because they're repressed kids, you know. So the all ages shows were always the best. we play in San Francisco. There's a million things going on every night.
Right.
So why is someone going to come see a band they've never heard of?
Right.
But in Boise, there's a show. Cool. Who's
There's
playing?
a show
Let's
going
go.
on tonight.
Yeah. So,
there hasn't been a show in months.
Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah.
And so we kind of, figured that out at least. But really, we were just doing what we wanted to do, and we were just having fun. And we were even if there's 5 people there, we just gave it like our 100%.
Right.
And like people are like, these guys are like jumping all over the walls for like the sound guy and 2 other people.
Right.
Right. And so we were kind of known as just this fun band and fun to see and fun to listen to and stuff. So,
which is funny because when I heard you, it just seemed so dark and subversive and like. It definitely seemed like something I shouldn't be allowed to listen to. You know what I mean? I mentioned a couple episodes ago, Phil Deeds, who is one of the guys who runs the Colorado Punk Rock Army site and stuff like that. Like, he used to date my babysitter, and he introduced her brother to the Warlock Pinchers. And that's how I kind of, I had heard about you guys through that. And I remember, like, seeing him at school in the leather jacket with the Warlock Pinchers logo on the back, and just like seeing that as like the pinnacle of like edgy, subversive punk rock, and like to hear that it was just like this group of just kind of goofy guys getting together and just throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall to see what sticks.
Right.
That's it.
It's weird. And also, because we didn't have a label and we didn't have money and we just did stuff however we had to do it, it was super low end, but we were trying to make it look good. So we would go to the copier stores in Boulder that had color copy machines. Like you could push blue ink or green ink. So we would run it through the black, then we'd like run it through again with the blue and run it through again with the green. And now we have like a 3-color flyer.
That's so cool.
And people are like, whoa, you have really nice flyers. And it's like, no, we're just like stealing copies from the... we would have like our own key cards that you put in the copy.
Like
that
at
would
Kinko's,
count.
they used to have the counters, and people would steal those keys all the time.
I just had my own key. So I think you come with their key and you buy 20 copies, and then you take out theirs and put in yours and make like the 150 copies.
That's how we made
3 colors. You
right.
know?
That's how we made the covers for our first 7-inch.
Yeah.
It was Geraldo from Bad People took us down to Kinko's and showed us that trick.
Oh man.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That's a great idea though. Like so you just like would switch out the cartridge and like select
put
the
the
different
cartridge
color.
in. Yeah. And we even would sometimes we just do the whole flyer on top of itself. So you'd have this kind of, 3D kind of weird looking.
Right.
Or we'd make a separate template that was just like the lettering or the border. So like we were really doing like multicolor design, but through a photocopier.
That's really neat.
And it was by necessity. It wasn't because we were great graphic designers and we thought of these great ways to make a cool looking thing. It was really like, how do we make a thing that looks better than every other shitty flyer on the post?
Right.
So, and then also we, this is pre-social media, really pre-internet.
Right.
And, it was a lot of flyering and passing out flyers. And at our shows, I have mailing lists, and we used to send out postcards for our tours and our shows to try to get people to come. I mean, we were doing everything we could, and I'm out flyering like 4 hours before the show, even,
right.
And just with unique looking weird stuff that's we were underground, but it was only because we didn't have any money.
Right.
So it was also underground music by necessity. Like, it's so underground, no one's heard of us. So you have to
Right.
kind of trick people into coming or whatever.
And that was behind a lot of like kind of the grit in your sound too. It was like you guys used a lot of drum machines that were in there, and everything kind of had this lo-fi grit to it. What kind of places were you guys recording at that time?
Like some of the 7-inches we just recorded in like Westminster or somewhere. We recorded with Bob Furbush. Do you know Bob?
I know the name.
Yeah, he recorded like almost every band in Denver from like the early to mid 80s till 2000. I mean, it was like, and that was like in a basement in Westminster, and he's recorded tons of stuff, but like
mostly to ADAT, or like what are you guys recording to? At that
I mean,
point?
the original album was 8-channel reel.
8-channel reel,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, and you'd have to bounce tracks and stuff like that.
Right.
And then later he got involved in digital recording stuff. God, I can't remember what the name of that tool was, but we had found a really cool multi-track hard drive recorder. Because even then, a PC didn't have recording programs. You'd have to go through some A to D box to even record digitally, But also, it's like
you're recording directly from a mixer to some sort of either reel-to-reel or like an ADAT machine or something like that.
Yeah. And so, but also it's like, as most shows and most recording studios, like they don't know what to do with us, right? Like there's a bunch of yelling kids with noisy, shitty cords, shitty equipment, and we're just yelling, and like they're just like, oh, I don't even know what do we do with this,
Right.
So we created, and so then the albums were much different than the live shows too, because the live shows is like chaos. The recordings were like kind of organized chaos, but we were sampling and doing stuff, stealing everything, making
tons of samples. I remember tons of samples.
Just stealing loops and we put that whole Manamana song, Manamana, do 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 do,
and then backwards, and then it all ran backwards.
Yeah. It's just like we were hoping to get sued, right? Like,
right.
Just anything we could do to get sued, because that's going to make us famous, right? But we never got sued. So
you guys were far enough off the radar that it never came up.
Yeah, and we even we went as far as sending our album or our 7-inch with a bunch of like boobs and porn glued onto the cover, and we sent it to Tipper Gore.
Did you really?
Yes. Because we're just like, Tipper Gore needs to hate us,
That'll make it that'll help our career, right?
Yeah.
If Tipper Gore hates you, that helps you right away.
Yeah, but like nothing. And then we were doing the song I Think We're Tiffany, which was like, Tiffany was huge, and that was like I was really getting into the pop stars.
Right.
It's like, this is
I Think
shitty
We're Alone
music.
Now. Her version of I Think We're Alone Now is
it's like
huge.
Shitty music, but like really well produced, and it's just tons of money going into it, and it makes it popular. And then the more people hear it, the more they like it. That's pop music, right? So you have to get it in front of people. So we did I Think We're Tiffany, which was our version of Tiffany's version of I Think We're Alone Now. And
you guys had the sample, this is Tiffany, and you're listening to the Warlock Pinchers.
Yeah, and that was actually from a real interview that I made fake credentials from the radio station at CU campus. I got in backstage to see Tiffany at Fiddler's Green and interview her for this radio station.
This non-existent radio station?
Well, no, it existed, but I didn't work there, So I was but I got a hold of her management and the concert stuff. So I actually got to meet Tiffany at Fiddler's Green, and so the interview is real. I'm asking her like, "Oh, do you like fruit striped gum?" And like, "What's your favorite cereal?" Those are all me actually talking to Tiffany. But then,
really?
Yeah, and then I asked her. I was like, "Oh, there's a local band who said that they have a song about you or whatever. Have you ever heard of that, Warlock Pinchers?" And so that's where we splice it, and she goes, "Oh yeah, that's one of my favorites or whatever." But the interview, I mean, I thought about that the other day.
I always thought that you just took it from like an interview that was on TV or something like that. You actually sat down.
It was me sitting there with Tiffany, and so I thought about it the other day.
That just made that so much cooler.
Oh, it's
man,
hilarious. And so I got to find that original tape, because I'm sure that is really fucking funny.
Right.
It's just me, like college freshman, like obsessed with pop music, gets to meet Tiffany and does an interview, and then later splices it together to try to get sued by her.
And then nobody sued you. So you're like going out of your way trying to get sued. You're going out of your way trying to get, targeted by the PMRC, and it's just not happening.
Yeah. So we decided to, we wrote a letter from Tiffany's management company to ourselves. It was like a cease and desist threat of legal action. And then we sent it to ourselves in the mail and received it and opened it up in shock. Oh my God, we're getting sued. And we sent it with our press release to several media outlets all over Denver, saying like, this isn't fair. We're just being our creative selves or whatever. And so like all these people came to my house, and I had a Tiffany wall of photos and ridiculous stuff. So they're like, take pictures
You're
of me
like,
in front
it
of
just sucks because I'm such a big fan.
I'm such a fan, and now she's suing me. And so it was ridiculous. So we had a fake lawsuit, and then and so a bunch of these articles about Campus Press, Colorado Daily, Westward, Rocky Mountain News, Denver Post. They all were covering it. But they were trying to get a hold of her management company. And she was huge. She just sold her 4 millionth album of her first record. And so we were banking on her management not getting back to these local media. So the articles were just starting to come out. And then somebody, I think it was Westward, actually got a hold of George Tobin Management, Tiffany's manager, faxed them a copy of this letter that we received. And all they said is, that's not our letterhead. And I'm like, damn it! Why didn't we find their letterhead somehow?
But you had already gotten some coverage before that.
Yeah, so we got some
right?
coverage. So then they're all calling and they're like freaking out. They're like, "What's going on? This is fake. What are you guys doing?" And so, and the press release was from our fake manager, Will Wheaton, who, because
Wheaton,
which is funny that Will Wheaton, because he's like a real person, like
Wait, did you know who Will Wheaton was when you did?
Yeah, but he was like a young, he was a kid actor, I guess, right?
On Star Trek Next Generation.
Yeah. And then we weren't fans of that, but I don't know why Mark Brooks thought Will Wheaton was cool. So, but also, as you know, like you call a venue in some city, right? And it's like, hey, I'm in a band. Like, click.
Right.
Hey, we want to play at your click.
Now it's you send an email and they just ignore the email.
Right, now they ignore the email. It's much different than ignoring the phone calls.
Right.
But back then we had to pay for long distance calls. And nobody wants to talk to the kid in the band, right? So we had a manager, but like we can't afford a manager, so we just had a fake manager. So any of us could call
and be like, "This is Will Wheaton.
This is Will Wheaton. We got this band in Denver that's coming through, and like they're just like ripping it up, and like we got to get them a show in your town because you're gonna love these guys. You can't talk about yourself in such a positive light because then you're just an asshole.
We had a period of time where we had a fake manager named Bill Bevington. We just thought like one of our bandmates used to get mail addressed to this guy Bill Bevington at his house, and we were like, it just sounds like a guy like with a mustache who's just like very serious and means like it sounds like a really like ritzy upper crust type of dude, like Bill Bevington. This is Bill Bevington.
And no one would make that up, right?
Right.
Like no one would make up a fake manager named Bill Bevington, so it's got to be real.
But
right?
you guys really committed to the bit. Like we did that a couple of times, and then we were like, I don't think that's going to work. We should probably stop doing it. Like we're going to get in trouble. Like you guys committed to the bit.
We committed to it, even so much so that we put it on a press release. So all the media was trying to call Will Wheaton, right? And we're like, I don't know where he is. Like we haven't seen him since 4 or 5 days. Like he split. So we kind of blamed the whole thing on Will Wheaton. Our crazy managers told us we were getting sued. So we were still kind of playing the victim.
Yeah,
we really wanted these.
We've been taken advantage of.
We wanted we wanted these articles to come out.
Right.
And so a couple people dropped them, and then a couple people wrote finished the article, but says like something isn't right here. We can't get a hold of this Will Wheaton. They don't know what happened. And so I would deem it like a 91% success. Because people thought we were getting sued. And like, well, why is this band getting sued? Then you have to listen to it or you go see them, right? So and so whatever the articles said, people forget what they just read 5 minutes ago, but they might remember the name. And so I think the Rocky Mountain News, it was called "Fake Publicity Fiery." Was like the headline, and so there was an article about how we weren't getting sued. So how do you get an article written about how you're not getting sued?
Right.
It was like amazing.
That's awesome.
This crazy stuff.
And this is so this is all your brainchild because you're the marketing guy in the band,
right? And really, all of us are sitting around just thinking of it. But I'm the one who's like pounding the pavement and putting up the flyers and like figuring out. I'm the people guy. So I was the social media guy back then before social media
was a thing.
I'm out talking to people and handing out the flyers and making, we're putting up stickers and whatever we could do to just get people to remember us.
Right. So what is your background in marketing then? Like that was just something you were interested in?
Yeah,
or?
It was from making T-shirts. I was
so you joined the band and just started making all the branded materials, and that was your introduction to marketing?
I had no musical history or abilities or anything, and I started out as a percussion player for
you used to bang on a cymbal.
Yeah, I banged it. Well, no, before that I banged on a Freon tank. And so those guys, they're like, they came to Boulder. I knew them a little bit before we were playing, together, but like, or before we got to school there. And so they're like, hey, we're playing. Like, do you want to come? You know, like you could bang on a thing or whatever. I was into industrial stuff back then. You know, I was into like Einstein's in Neubauten and
like Skinny Puppy and shit like that.
Yeah, but even noisier, just like pure noise, like controlled bleeding and just like noise, 100% noise. And so the idea of just like banging on a thing, along with the kind of boop, doop, deep, doop, 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 you know, like the shitty drum machine.
Right.
We wanted some kind of power in it. So I was like, but I have no drumming skills either, right? So I'm banging on a Freon can. Then I added the cymbal.
How did you convince them to let you in their band?
Well, I mean, because it was really.
Because I mean, I'm glad you were in the band, and you obviously were so instrumental in that. But I'm just like trying to imagine the conversation of like a guy who lives in the dorm, and they're like trying to have a band, and you're just like, you should let me come play the Freon tank,
right,
and make T-shirts.
Yeah.
Like how did you talk yourself into that?
I really have no idea. I mean, it's like, hey, come down and play with us. We're going to play on Pearl Street Mall for like as people are walking by.
They already kind of had that attitude where they were like reaching out and grabbing people and just kind of going
just,
whatever.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, you're cool, I guess, or whatever. And so, so we start doing that, and then I start, you know, it's like, and so Scratchy's doing like the you know, he's the MC rapper, and I was just yelling like
you're the hype man.
The hype man, and yeah, I was the Flava Flav kind of, right?
Yeah, totally.
And or like, you know, if we all want to yell something, and so we would all like yell, you know, like we did Back in Black. That was one of the original ones on the cassette, right? So it's like Back in Black,
right.
Sax. So I'm just like I'm the yelling guy in the background, but then we started writing songs for two MCs. And so that's when it got really complex with like the lyrics and stuff, and just like Scratchy would like show up to practice with some crazy thing written in 3 colors of pen. He have a black pen, a red pen, and a green pen. And maybe even one of those pens that like clicks and you switch the color. I'm hoping.
Where you try to like push all the
and you're like, oh no,
through.
they're all coming through the thing
at once, yeah.
And so like he would be red, I would be green, and then if we're both singing, it would be in black. And so he was like making these complex rhymes.
That's
and just
so
it was
cool.
really cool. And so and you know, we're not singing, we're just rapping or yelling or whatever. You know? So it's like and we did get compared to the Beastie Boys because they were like obnoxious white kids yelling, right? And we were obnoxious white kids yelling.
But you guys were darker and grittier, man.
And we were, I mean, it was shock value, and we had all these songs about Satan.
Right, and I thought you guys were a legit satanic band, which I found out now that I'm older there are very few legitimately satanic. I mean, Slayer is not a satanic band.
Right.
You know
and
what I mean?
if you were satanic, would you really have a band?
Right, exactly. Truly satanic.
Yeah,
you know?
Truly satanic.
It's more of that like satanic temple type of thing, where it's more of like a counter myth and more of like a trolling type.
Yeah,
of thing.
You're trolling everybody, and so we're basically trolling the parents of the kids who have never heard of us yet.
Right.
Because the parents hear about it, and they're just like, "Oh my God, this is awful," and the kid's like, "What's that?" You know, or the kid comes home with the T-shirt, and like the mom throws it away because it's like, "No, this is satanic," you know. But the lyrics were so goofy that if you sit and listen to it, it's like, we're in league with Satan. We bowl a perfect game. You know? It's like, wait a second. You know, it's like we were taking stuff from Slayer.
That's from Devil Without a Pause, right?
Yeah. But it's actually Venom. I mean, Venom has a song in league with Satan. And it's like,
we're in a league with Satan. We bowl a perfect game. I just put that fucking
and so
joke
I was
together.
this Venom fan, right? So, and almost all the lyrics are inside jokes, right? Like that, right? Like, I'm a Venom fan, and they have this. I'm like, we got to use this line in league with Satan. And we're in the league, which is a bowling league. You know, it's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Dude, it's interesting to like hear you talk about that stuff without any conscious awareness of it. But so much of what you guys did, the spirit of that informed who we became. Like really, like the idea of putting inside jokes in lyrics. The grittiness of it was something that always really appealed to me. The way you guys use sampling and it was all like when I heard that, it sounded like something I wasn't supposed to be listening to.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
And we were using the tenets of pop music, the tenets of
Like
satanic
songwriting
bands.
structure?
Yeah, songwriting structure, and just like, or what do you talk about, right? You try to identify with people or anti-identify with people.
Right.
Or it's like someone wants to like chant at a concert like, Hail Satan, or Satan, 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 you know, and it's like, that's fun. But
Right.
if the parents see it, like they're mad about it. And
Right.
that's like, so you can help create the rebellion.
Right,
you
and you
know?
can create a little counter buzz about yourself
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, because counter buzz is as good as buzz,
Right,
right?
exactly.
You know?
So on that note, tell me about something I want to get into at some point is the Imposters album
Oh yeah, for
that we
sure.
were on.
Yeah.
But while I was at that show, which we'll talk about more because there's a whole bunch to that I want to talk about, I saw some. There was like a video loop that was running, and it was showing footage of you guys playing live, and it was showing footage of different interviews that you did and things like that. And there was an interview that you guys did that was by some religious fundamentalist group, where it was like they were doing an expose on satanic music, and it was like the first half of the episode was on Slayer, and then the second half was about you guys.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that experience.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
Was that the only time anything like that ever happened?
To that level, for sure.
Yeah.
For
So
sure.
tell me a little bit about what went into
And
that.
so there's a guy, Blaine Bartell, in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
He's like a youth pastor, and he's working with kids or whatever. And they decided to do an episode about Denver. So they came out to Denver, and they were going to metaphysical stores and looking for things like
Because compared to Oklahoma City, I'm sure we just seem like a den of iniquity.
Yes,
you know?
and they're like, and they're standing by a Mile High Stadium, and like, we're a mile high closer to God here in Denver, you know, and like going to the big city, and we're like, and so we're
here to see what's going down in the Mile High City.
And so they went to Wax Trax, and they're like, "Hey, you know, what are the popular bands in town?" And you know, we're from out of town, and E-Rock, our bass player, worked at Wax Trax,
Right.
And maybe they were asking about like satanic or metal or whatever, or maybe just what was going on.
What the kids were listening to.
Yeah, so he, of course, like gives them a flyer. We were playing that, and we just happened to be playing that night. And so he gave him a flyer for our show. He showed him the record, and that was Deadly Kung Fu Action. So it's the Raiders logo, but
With
we
Satan in
put
it.
the devil in it. So the songs where we were like the official sound of Satan, which we coined ourselves. You know? We didn't
and
ask
you guys
permission.
had those cheerleaders costumes, the official
Right,
cheerleaders
the Satan's
of
cheerleaders,
Satan. Yeah.
Cindy and Mindy. So we were on this big kind of satanic thing, and then at some point we're like, okay, what's our next thing? And a lot of the rap bands were wearing Raiders gear and stuff, and like, so we're not going to show up.
And you're from Denver, so it's like you're playing heel. You're playing the fucking
There's so
bad
many
guy.
levels to that Raiders thing. It's ridiculous. So we're from Denver, and everyone hates the Raiders, right? So like anything, but also
So
we're
that
not,
already gets a reaction.
already
from
gets a
people.
reaction. But also we're not the kind of like rappers who're going to show up in a bunch of gear, you know, like we're not going to go buy a bunch of Raiders gear to be like the Raiders dudes. So we like made our logo the Raiders. We took our old devil that was in our official Sound of Satan logo, and we had the watches, official time of Satan.
I remember the official time
Yeah.
of Satan watch. Yeah.
Official board of Satan skateboards. But we were trying to just move to the next thing, and not like we were over it, but it was just like, okay, what's the next thing? And I was like, all the rappers love the Raiders stuff. Take our devil logo, but put it in the Raiders thing.
Right.
And, it
And
says
now you
Pincher.
see so many mock-ups that people have done on the Raiders thing.
It's become ubiquitous. And that was the era where people were just starting to rip off corporate logos. But it was like the rave scene.
Like where
rave
pop
parties.
art was becoming a big popular
Yeah,
thing,
and
right?
like rave would like take like a Tide, you know, like the Tide logo, and they would make a rave flyer about it.
Right, no, totally. And you'd see that stuff at like
bands-
Spencer Gifts or whatever.
But bands weren't doing it like that. So
Right.
we like so I was like, hey Mark, you got to put our devil in the Raiders thing somehow. And so he figured it out, and that's like even now I still sell T-shirts with that.
Oh, yeah?
30 years later. I mean,
Oh,
people
yeah?
hoodies, T-shirts, you know, and so the religious guys buy the album, take it back to their hotel. They didn't have a record player, but they read the lyric sheet. And it's like they pulled out that song. And so then they come to interview us at the show. And so now E-Rock's created this scenario where they come to our show and they're interviewing kids outside and they're like, what do you think about this satanic music? And the kids like, well, it's just fun, cool stuff. Like they're not sacrificing chickens on stage or anything. And they're like, oh, you haven't seen them do that yet? It's like they're just thinking we're inducting these kids into our cult or whatever.
Right. And they just haven't been exposed to the real rough stuff yet.
Yeah. And so they interviewed us backstage, and he reads the lyrics, which they put on the screen when they produced the show, and it's like, we're in league with Satan. We bowl a perfect game, and I'm just like laughing my ass off. Like what? Like you guys are really serious? Like
it's
you
like
think this is
the
real.
irony's going right over your head,
yeah,
right?
As it does.
Yeah.
And he even says, the S, the A. He said the S, the A, the tan, but it's the S, the A, the TAN. Satan is his name. Power, evil, goaty, woady, Satan, Satan, Satan. And he's like, so do you guys really believe this stuff? Is this just a joke? And we're like, Satan's cool. We all go the whole,
I remember
Satan's
that.
cool.
And he goes down the line, he goes, what do you think about Satan? And it's just like down the line, cool. And then I think it was probably Scratchy was at the very end. And he's like, yeah, Satan's cool, but God, let me tell you about God. And like,
God, the mother, and they're
yeah.
beeping him out. It was fucking funny.
And this dude's in like his, 3-piece tweed suit or whatever, just like with the blow-dried haircut, like sticking the mic in your faces and stuff like that.
So then they produced the show, which you can see on YouTube. It's called Satanism Unmasked Part 2. And
Satanism Unmasked Part 2.
And it's
on
the
YouTube.
Satanic Panic, and we're part of it. So yeah, they're showing like hardcore metal shows, whatever, and they're like, now we're going to Denver, and it's like Warlock Pinchers, and like, ridiculous. And it comes back a couple times throughout that episode, and even at the very end, there's great things in Denver, and there's churches and whatever, and like that's better than Warlock Pinchers, and we're like, there are so many sound bites in this. It's like we can't.
I know, dude.
Keep
You just
track of
hooked
them
us
all.
up. You just did a bunch of work for us. Have you seen that? Have you seen that Hail Satan documentary?
Oh yeah,
yet?
yeah.
It was just so fascinating to me how religious fundamentalists can be manipulated by the fear of the idea of Satan by a bunch of people who are not true Satanists. Like nobody in that church really believes in Satan. They don't believe. They don't believe in the devil. They don't believe in any of it. But they have this organization as a countermyth, as something that is like just designed to, throw shit at the fundamentalist religious, like how it affects the separation of church and state, and this, the fundamentalist complex that's like built in. Like they just use it to shut that down. Yeah. And you guys were part of that during
that's
that's
exactly what we were doing, because we know that if we chant Satan, someone's going to get upset, and other people are going to
get mad. They're going to take it seriously.
And so that's it. You start separating it out.
So
and if you only if only 10% comes your way, that's better than being a boring band that no one even remembered the name, right? And people are like, oh, they were chanting Satan, and that was kind of fun, and they were throwing candy. That's weird, It's like, so nothing made sense. And the Satanic Temple is awesome because they're oh, you think we're big, evil, black wearing maniacs? Like we'll play that role.
Yeah, we'll play that part.
We'll show up at the thing and be the people wearing all black, and you can make fun of us or whatever.
Right.
Meanwhile, we have a lawyer, and if you're going to put up your Ten Commandments statue, we're going to put up our Baphomet statue.
Which also happened to be Oklahoma City, where they were doing that, which is interesting.
It's funny how this Oklahoma City. And side note, Blaine Bartell later comes out as being addicted to porn.
Really?
And he gets kicked out of his ministry and all this stuff, and he makes a bunch of amends to God or whatever, and like, they're all such phonies.
He probably he by coming out addicted to porn, it probably means that like he saw it for the first time and didn't know what to do with himself when those images started affecting his body. He started having a biological response to watching that stuff and probably got terrified by it all. I'll bet you Blaine Bartell watched maybe a dozen pornos.
Right.
Maybe.
And he thought he was addicted.
And thought he was addicted. And was just like, this is awful. God's going to punish me. It's like that episode of King of the Hill where Hank has one hit of pot accidentally and thinks that he's just like destroyed his life because he got all hopped up on pot. It's like, I'm a pot addict now. You know?
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So how much touring did you guys realistically do during this time that you were playing? Like how much real playing, or was it for the most part just like making records and then like doing all this hype stuff around?
Well, early on we played a bunch because it's like we'll play any show anywhere.
Right.
We wanted to get in front of people. We'll play a basement party. We'll open up for whatever, But then we very quickly got into opening up for other bands. So like Butthole Surfers were coming here, and we're like, we got to play that show. And so I get a hold of Fay Concerts, like the biggest concert company.
Barry Fay, man.
Bill Bass and Barry Fay putting on, and so this is pretty weird for them, right? Because they're the biggest concert company. They do Red Rocks and Rainbow Music Hall, and
right, they do everywhere.
But they're doing this show at Glenn Miller Ballroom at CU campus, and I'm like, hey, we're a band. We kind of know Butthole Surfers, which we had talked to them maybe on the phone, like we got their number, and we're like, but. They're like, yeah, we really think it'd be cool to play with them, whatever. You guys need an opening band. We're on campus in Boulder. We live up here. We'll flyer the shit out of it, And so they're like, okay, cool. Like you can play for 20 minutes. We'll give you $100 and have fun. And don't do anything like that's gonna get us in trouble.
Right.
Like they're like, do not throw anything, do not light anything on fire. They're like, our insurers are freaking out about just the name of this band, Butthole Surfers.
Right,
They're like, if you punks do anything to jeopardize this show, like I'll be like up your ass, like
well, and
hardcore.
you guys were probably close to the only game in town at that point. Like there weren't a ton of like fringe punk rock extreme bands in Denver at that time.
Yeah, I mean it was a handful, and Boulder actually at that time Boulder was kind of a punk.
Was there a lot
scene.
going on?
Yeah,
oh,
there was shows.
Club
and,
156.
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
even like warehouse shows, and they did shows at what was called Gate 10, which was like Gate 10 of the CU stadium.
Oh wow!
And they did for some reason, maybe they had to through some kind of like thing where like as a student you could put on some event at this one space,
right?
And so they did punk shows there. So Boulder was kind of thriving actually, but
it was just like a student multi-use space that they
had to
events.
let you. Yeah, I don't know how it worked, but nobody had the balls to try to call Butthole Surfers, call Fay Concerts, and get on the show. But like I did,
right,
because it's like we have absolutely nothing to lose. We were the nothing to lose band,
right?
No one even knows us, right? So we get on this show.
I can just see Barry Fay like going like, I don't know what these kids are doing.
Fine.
Go ahead, play the show, have fun.
We need something to happen before the headlining band. So fine, these kids. So we did it. It was awesome. It was on Halloween night, I think 1988. I'm sure by the time Butthole Surfers played, like no one even remembered us, right?
Right.
Except Butthole Surfers remembered us, and they were like, "Yeah, you guys were cool. Like you guys were awesome. We never play with cool bands, Like you guys are fucked up. You're weird."
This was when they were starting to get a little steam, and they were kind of distanced from like the underground a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they were doing. That this was a 1,000-person venue, so they're not doing the punk rock shows, but they're still in a shitty van or whatever, But we traded T-shirts with them. We kept in touch. Teresa Coffey, one of the two drummers, whatever, she loved our Tiffany stuff, and she's like, I want that Tiffany shirt, like that's amazing, So we really like bonded and made friends, and we ended up later playing with them multiple times in Denver, Salt Lake City. We went and recorded a song at their studio in Driftwood. We kind of created
really cool.
by just this nothing to lose kind of
right.
thing. And then, because it went pretty well, and we flyered the heck out of it, whatever, like a month or two later, I think it was like a month later, Red Hot Chili Peppers were playing at the Glenn Miller Ballroom, same exact thing. And I'm like, hey, Bill Bass from Fake Concerts, like, remember us? Like, we flyered that. We got people there. We know a lot of people, whatever. And they're like, yeah, fine, come play.
Yeah.
20 minutes, just do your shit, get off the stage. Awesome,
Right.
So we did that, and it was 100% different, right? We do this show, and we really felt like we had nothing to lose then. So
Right.
we made this giant Tiffany head that was like 9 feet tall of all like blown up Xeroxes and pasted all like on a cardboard thing. And we cut the eyes out and we mounted silly string cans behind the eyes. And so we do our Tiffany song and we're just shooting silly string out the eyes and we're throwing stickers and stuff. And the Red Hot Chili Pepper fans hated us. Hated us. Butthole Surfers fans were like, we don't know what's going on, but we're just excited for whatever.
Right.
People were booing us. They were throwing shit at us. It was so fucking funny. And so they were throwing, because what do you have in your pockets? They had change. They were throwing change. So Scratchy's going around collecting up all the change. He's like, I made 49 cents so far. Like, bring it on, you know? And so in that case, I would say we impressed 2% of the audience, and the rest of the audience hated us.
Right.
But all those people,
The 2%'s all you need.
the 2% is all we need, and all those people who hated us, the next day, are they talking about the Chili Peppers? No, they're talking about
the
us.
awful
This
band.
fucking band. They were throwing shit. They did a Tiffany song, whatever, and so that even propagated. People like, oh wait, what was that? You know, like
Yeah, people who didn't like the Red Hot Chili Peppers or just were looking for something different are overhearing these people talk, and they
it's
got to
like,
go
well,
check
that
it
actually
out.
sounds kind of funny. I don't know why you were so pissed off. The Tiffany head and we had the giant fruit stripe gum things. Like we were
Right.
just blowing up Xeroxes, and you know, it's like we're dancing around with these like fruit stripe gum, like ridiculous.
Right.
And so, but there again, it's kind of like there's no such thing as bad press. People hated us, and that was funny. And I still run into people every now and again who was at that show. They're like, I was at that Chili Peppers show. I remember it. Like, people hated
Really?
you guys, you know?
That's so
And
great.
the Chili Peppers would not let us sell our merch for less than their merch. So we're selling our T-shirts for we sell our shirts for $5, right? We just want people to have them.
But they're
Our
selling stuff for
albums
like 30, 40 bucks.
Yeah, well, back then it was like $20, but that seemed like a lot to us.
Right.
At 1988.
Yeah.
And so, and our albums we were selling for $5, right? But they're like, no, you got to sell your albums for $12. And so we're like, okay, fine. No one's going to buy our shitty punk crap album. But like, then we sold some albums and we're like, damn, well, here's a free T-shirt then, because like,
You
we
felt
don't want
bad
to sell
for
it
like
to you for that.
overcharging.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like, what? And so, but yeah, that was really, everything we did was like that, where it was like, we're getting involved in something we have no idea what we're doing.
Right.
And somehow navigating it, right?
Right.
And even like that Pinch a Loaf album, have you ever seen one in person?
No.
Like the Pinch a Loaf album, because it was.
I had the CD that was both albums in one.
Right.
Right.
So some of the insert shows the Pinch a Loaf, but we got blank glossy covers, and we screen printed them.
Okay.
So it says Pinch a Loaf in screen printed letters, and then on the back it was like all the song names and stuff. Because it was just too expensive to get a record cover.
Right.
The album cost $1 or $2, but then the printing, if you want to get color printing, that's like $4 or $5. We're
Right.
trying to sell them for $5. So, and we had to pay for the recording or what, you know. So
Right.
the economy doesn't work. So we just screen printed the albums, and then, but it would like scratch off, like you could scratch it off, like the one
Right, because it doesn't stick to the glossy cover for shit.
So the one at the radio station on campus, people were scratching in messages and stuff in the. You know, and then people, if in interviews, were like, "Oh yeah, did you get our Scratch and Sniff album?" And they're like, "Oh, this, you know, we're at some college radio," and they're like, "Scratch and Sniff." They're like, "What does it smell like?" And they're like, "Try it," and they're like, "Smells like paint." You know, it's like ridiculous. But then we ended up having this really weird looking album because we had to.
Right.
The only way we could afford it.
And people are like, "That's so cool." And
Yeah,
like nobody was doing anything like
Yeah,
that.
and then we got on Boner Records, and we were really trying to find a label to put out Pinch a Loaf for real, you know,
Right.
because we thought that was like our, you know, that was our best work.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
never
yeah.
going to top this. And Boner Records is like, you guys are cool. I don't want to do that album. I want to do your next album.
Right.
And we're like, cool. And we already had a bunch of songs. So that was Deadly Kung Fu Action. And so then that was when we really started touring maybe more with bands. We played with Melvins, who were on that label, Ed Hall, who was on that label, Steel Pole Bathtub, which was some people
Cool.
from Littleton and Boulder who had moved to San Francisco, and they were on the label, so they helped get us on there. But we were still in college. We were in college pretty much the whole time. So we would tour on Christmas break and then in the summer.
Right.
So we didn't tour extensively. We never even went to the East Coast.
Right.
And we all took a semester off, and we're going to go all around the U.S. and Europe. We had some booking agent. Like, we're getting big time. We got a booking agent, and like, you know, we keep having to send them money for the phone bills and stuff. And so we were paying hundreds of dollars in phone bills, and we had this tour set up, and then they just disappeared.
The booking agency just disappeared?
Yeah. And we're like, where's our tour? And they're like, we never even got a hold of them again. And so we had some of the dates and some of the clubs. So we were calling. We're like, hey, we were setting up this show, and our booking agent. And they're like, oh. So we actually patched it together because we all took time off of school.
Right.
And so we're like, well, fuck booking agents. Like, we did better than that.
Right.
So we never had like a full-scale tour, you know. And we'd hook up with bands. Like, we played with All in Boise. We played with Psychic TV in Salt Lake City. So we try to get on bigger shows. And then that's also the time that No One in Particular Presents was Denver, big independent promoters.
Right.
And they realized what Fay Concerts may or may not have realized, but we're marketers. We make cool flyers. And so they'd have a show, like they had Dead Milkmen were coming.
Right.
And like 2 weeks before the show, they're not selling enough tickets, and it's at the Gothic Theater. So they would just call us and be like, hey, do you guys want to play the show? And we're like, yes. Because they knew that we would scramble and get the last 200 people to come because to see us or whatever, and we'd make a cool flyer. So we played with Mudhoney. We actually played with Third Base, which was weird.
What's
Do you remember
Third Base?
It was like Jewish white rappers from New York, and like
I have no idea.
So it was like a rap show, and like, whoa,
Right.
we're playing a legit real rap show. But of course, the rap people hated us,
Right.
Because we're just obnoxious kids yelling, you know, like. And the live show, you don't really get all the subtle rhymes,
Right.
You know? It's just who are these obnoxious kids yelling? you know?
Right.
So Third Base, it was funny, but like, it didn't really fly either. But,
Right.
But people remember that Dead Milkman show a lot, and so it was just weird that they were using us as much as we were using them.
Right.
They put us on the show because they knew that we would sell tickets, and we just wanted to play. We could play for all the Dead Milkmen fans who never heard of us. So just everything about it. And then Circusized Peanuts comes along, and so now we're getting really into recording and sampling and doing like complex stuff with sampling and just Easter eggs and hiding stuff in there, and we even ditched like the Devil's, even the Raiders thing, and it was all like the clowns.
Right. I remember Circus-Sized Peanuts was just like it looked like a vintage circus poster.
Yeah.
Of some sort.
Yeah. We got into all the clowns, not scary clowns, but like happy clowns.
Yeah,
Happy clowns are way scarier than like It type scary clowns.
Right.
Like, I'm scared of happy clowns because like, what are they hiding?
Right.
You
Right.
know? So
it looks like a Gacy painting.
yeah, exactly. So so we kept changing too, you know, and it's like no one knew really what to expect, including ourselves, right? Because we don't know what we're going to do next. So it all kind of works.
So
you know.
So let me ask you this then: why the brevity of the career? Like what ended it for you guys?
Yeah, that's good that you mentioned
College?
that. Yeah, no, well, because we were all getting out by then. It's
Right,
like
right.
we could be ready to be like stadium anthem superstars because we're all out of school now. you know?
Right.
But it's cool that you mentioned that because do you know about the book that just came out, the Denver and the Cowtown Punks Volume 2?
No.
Oh, you got to check that out. It's
Denver and the Cowtown Punks Volume 2.
So the first one came out, and it's two guys who were around back then. Bob, Donut Crew Records. He was putting out 7 inches of like Boulder and Denver punk bands, and so he would do like a 7-inch single with 4 bands. So each band had a song. And there's 2 songs on each side. And then Sonny K, who later started GSL Records and was in a band, the VSS, but he was in bands in Boulder and stuff. And so those guys got real retrospective about all the stuff that was happening in Denver and Boulder that even now a lot of the people around the country don't know because we were this kind of island, right?
Right.
And so they did this book, and it was Denver punk from like 84 to 88 or something like that, or 81 to 88 or something. And so that predated me. That was like when I was in high school.
Is this like a lot of the same bands that are on that what is it, Rocky Mountain Low?
Yeah, that's the
12
era.
inch.
That's the era of Denver, which a lot of cool stuff came out of Denver. But
Like
it
even
was
stuff
also,
with pre-Dead Kennedy stuff with Jello Biafra.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
things like that.
And so they did a book of that era, and Warlock Pinchers it was like skated into the very end of that era because we were around 87, 88. But then they just came out with, like a month ago, they came out with the volume 2, which was like 89 to 96 or something.
Right.
And so we have a whole chapter in that book.
Ooh, come on,
Yeah.
96 to 2000s. Get us in there.
The
Come
third
on.
one, the third one.
Yeah, get us in the third one. Come on.
And so, but we did some extensive interviewing with them and really tried to, because like we all have our different versions about why we split up. But I'll just tell you mine because that's what I
tell me
think.
yours.
But so we were touring, we were playing, we are trying to get on a bigger label. Like, okay, are we gonna break? We're gonna be we're gonna get on a big label. And a couple guys didn't want to tour anymore.
Right.
And it's like, dang, we can't be at like a local band anymore. We've toured now, right? We've toured, we've played.
Right. We can't go back now.
Can't go back.
And how many people are in the band? 'Cause
5.
There's 5.
Yeah. At one point we had 6.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Because if you like look at the liner notes on Deadly Kung Fu Action, it lists like 6 people, and there's like a guy who's just responsible for like beats and samples, and
Right.
like that. I didn't understand that when I was younger. You know what I mean?
The original. So Brian Murphy, and then Brian and Dan and Mark were like the 3 guys when coming to Boulder, and then I was the 4th guy.
Right.
And then we were doing Pinch a Loaf, and E-Rock came along, and he's like, "You guys would be cool with another bass player." And he was in punk bands, he was older than us, so he was in like punk bands in like 85, 86.
Right.
And so we had 2 bass players, and then we, one of the guys I had a lot of classes with, who lived across the street from me in the dorm, was Derek D-Rock, and he played guitar. And so for this time, there was one tour we actually had 6 people in a VW bus. And we built like a platform. So 4 of us would like slide in like sardines between the platform and the roof.
Right.
We all slide in, and then 2 guys driving and passenger. And we did like a West Coast tour like that. It was like miserable.
That's so cool.
Crazy. And then Brian got out, and so then we were 5 for the rest of the time.
Okay.
So
there's guys that don't want to tour anymore.
yeah, so a couple guys don't want to tour, and then they're like, yeah, we could still record, but then we hadn't really been writing any songs, and Scratchy and I were kind of on our own things, and I had started another band, and Mark had started another band, which was Foreskin 500.
Okay.
And I had started Scramblehead.
Okay.
And so we're like, so we're just like, well, let's do one big tour, one big last tour, and one big last show. And it'll be our last show ever. We will never play again, right? Because like bands would quit, have their last show, and then like 6 or 9 months later,
The endless reunion tours.
Yeah,
It's like Kiss has been breaking up probably since you guys were around.
Exactly. I went to their first final show. Yeah. Last tour ever.
Yeah.
And so, so we did. We had a last tour, and we just broke everything. Like just. We just went nuts because we like this. We knew this was kind
We're
of
never
it.
gonna do this again.
We're quitting. So it was like the craziest, funnest, weirdest. I remember Salt Lake City, like at least Dan and Mark, or Dan and Brian, maybe. No, Brian wasn't there. But like wore diapers and Saran wrap, and like we broke everything. Salt Lake City was always our last show of the tour before Denver, when we'd go up like around the West Coast.
Right. So let's get rid of all
the
the stuff.
We broke everything in Salt Lake City. So people in Salt Lake City thought we were like these maniacs, right?
Right.
We had great shows there. So then we played our last show in Denver, and we had the shirts. It's like, I saw Warlock Pincher's last show. Now I'm going to kill myself. And it was a clown with a gun in his head.
Right.
It's like, and people are like, is this really real? Because it's like we way over publicized. Some people say it's their last show or whatever.
Right.
Like, no, seriously, this is our last show ever. We're erasing.
And it wasn't an acrimonious situation at all. Like you guys all just kind of mutually went.
Yeah, I think we're like, okay,
it's time to
we'll
move
do
on.
something else, right? Like,
right.
Mark and I were doing a lot of the kind of the back end work, the merch, the touring, the tours, the booking the tours,
Right.
And yeah, we all had so many varied interests that the band
You weren't
was not
super wrapped up in it.
Yeah, we
it
weren't
wasn't-
like, if I don't have this band, I'm not gonna have a life,
Plus, it hadn't become. You guys had momentum, but it hadn't become like the iconic, legendary status that it has become in like my generation's eyes. You know what I mean? Like it was just you guys in your own minds were probably just like, our band's done, no big deal.
Right, and as big as we got, I mean, our last several shows, like at the Gothic, we would sell out the Gothic. So that's roughly 1,000 people.
Yeah, that's
so
really
that's pretty
cool.
good. I mean,
That's really good.
and bands, so like some bands who got big, like the Fluid was a band before us, and they got big and they moved to Seattle or whatever. They got on
Sub Pop,
Sub
right?
Pop and stuff. So they kind of transcended that. But for us, we were pretty much like the biggest small band from here, you know?
Right.
And so we're like, yeah, we're gonna quit at the height of our popularity. That seems really dumb, but who knows?
Oh, well.
And it ends up, what happens is it freezes us in time,
Right.
right? That's the day the day of our last show is the first day any of us made any money from the band. Because we always put the money back in. Like, it's like, oh, we
Right.
got money for touring. I mean, I remember
There was nothing to put it back into, so you
Yeah,
guys are like,
yeah.
oh,
and like
wow.
all the money from merch, I was controlling all the stuff for the merch, and I would just come up with more merch, right? Like, oh, we sold all the whatevers. Now I can buy 144 of some other ridiculous thing.
Right.
And so, but yeah, the day of that show, we all just divided up the money and sold the van and tried to sell all our merch, you know?
Right.
And it's like, holy shit, we all just made money for the first time from this band. And it's like, it's weird how we were never in it for money, and we always put the money back in, but now there's nothing to put it into.
You guys just liquidated it all
yeah.
and just...
we were like, wow, we actually just made a bunch of money for all the work that we did.
Right.
I mean, hourly it was probably 5 cents an hour, but like,
Right.
you think of it as like, wow, we actually, you know, and because we froze...
I've got the net worth of my career in my hand right
yeah.
here. Yeah.
And then for months and months after that, you know, and now the you know, wax tracks and stuff, we're selling everything, and people were like buying more then because now
Right.
it doesn't exist, you know. And I kind of know, like, I got into Big Black, Steve Albini's
Right.
Big Black after they had quit. And it's like, I want to see them live. I got to see it. And I can't because they don't exist.
Right.
And it's like, I know what that feeling is. And that's where people come in and it's passed down to the younger brothers, and
Right.
the babysitter passes it down to the kids. And like,
Right.
so your generation was...
It becomes like a ghost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's like, this is a band that you can't see, but you have to listen to it.
Right.
You know? And it's like, I can't see it, so I want to see it. And so
Right.
people
And I can't Wikipedia you guys at
Yeah.
this point. You
No,
know what I mean?
It's all legend.
So
It's
I've got
all-
like a picture, and then I've got like what you guys have written in the album, and then as I get older, I've got these little crumbs of information that I get from people who were there.
Yeah.
So it gives this mythology to you
Yeah.
guys. It like makes you guys like folk heroes almost.
Right, and
you know?
so it does get passed down in the stories of the shows and the crazy stuff, and so it all gets passed down, and it's still happening. I mean, like,
Yeah.
and it's crazy because some people come up to me and like, "Were you in that Warlock Pinchers band?" I was like, "How do you that was literally 30
Dude, and you
years
have done
ago."
so much since then.
Yeah.
All right. So how old are you when you get out of Warlock Pinchers? So you're out of college. So you're what, 20 by the time you
Probably
quit
like
Warlock-
22
You're
or something.
22 by the time
Yeah,
Warlock
it's like
Pinchers
22,
done.
23.
Okay, so literally 30 years ago here.
Yeah.
So what do you do next? Like, what happens after the Warlock Pinchers are done? What do you do next?
Yeah. So I had started a band called Scramblehead.
Right.
And that was all Charles Manson songs.
Okay, I've
The
heard
Charles
about
Manson
this.
folk tunes that was just him on the guitar
Right.
with lots of like groupies.
Which are beautiful
Oh,
songs.
amazing music and really
People
awesome.
don't really know that Charles Manson was a marvelous songwriter.
Yeah, and good singing too.
Yeah.
and
And he probably could have been a legitimate like rock pop star had things not gone the way that they went.
I think so. I mean, I really enjoy the songs, right?
Right.
And the Beach Boys, you know, he was hanging out with Dennis Wilson and stuff, and it could have happened, right? But of course it didn't.
In an alternate universe. you know.
Right. But so I wanted to do those songs, but do them like in what Manson became like aggro, you know?
Right.
So we had 2 guitar players, 2 bass players, 2 to 5 drummers, drum machine.
2 to 5
Yeah,
drummers?
yeah.
That's a large spread,
It's
my
a
man.
large- well, because sometimes we'd have 2 drummers, and we would just line up a bunch of toms, and they
Right.
would all play them, and they would share drums. They would be going back and forth,
Right.
like so. It was kind of a visual thing, and drum machine too. And so we had the Alesis industrial
Right.
drum machine, so it was like harder sounds. And I did all the vocals on walkie-talkie, like a CB band walkie-talkie.
Right.
And so just yelling in a walkie-talkie.
Is that something that like transferred over from the Warlock Pinchers stuff? Because you guys did a lot of the megaphone stuff.
Yeah, we had the stuff with the megaphone into the mic and the distortion.
But this is like CB walkie-talkie or just like...
a CB walkie-talkie. And so it was funny because at a
How'd
show...
you amplify it?
I would put the receiver, the CB receiver at the soundboard. And it's
they'd plug it in?
Here, take the 1/4 inch out from this CB. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, yeah, this is the vocals. And they're like, this little wireless. I mean, because it wasn't even wireless vocals back then, right? But I'm wireless, right? And so then I have the walkie-talkie, and like, if you talk into the walkie-talkie, you push down the button and talk, and it's like, and then, but if you just push down the button, it's just feeding back through the whole room. It's beautiful. It's just like, because it's. But if you're talking, there's a louder, because it's amplifying whatever's coming in the condenser mic.
Right.
And so if you're talking, it's really loud, and so you don't get the feedback. But as soon as you stop talking, it just starts feeding back. So it's amazing. It's the best thing for vocals. And it was just shrill and loud. We all had X's on our heads. Had 3 female backup singer go-go dancers, all with X's on their heads. And at some shows, they had guns on stage with shooting blanks. So they would march out.
No way you could get away with that today.
Never. And even having gotten banned from CU campus in the Warlock Pincher days, somehow I got them to let us have guns with blanks on stage.
How did you guys
At CU
How
campus.
did Warlock Pinchers get banned from CU campus?
Oh, that's a whole nother story. You know the song "We Got the Beast"?
Right.
That song is about that. But basically, so it was called Quigley's, later Club 156.
Right.
And we played there a bunch because there was like, they would always call us like, oh, we open up for this band, So
Right.
we just kind of got sick of playing there. And so we're like, what can we do to not, like, if we said like, no, we don't want to do this show, then we're like elite assholes. Right. So it's like, we have to make it their prerogative.
So they won't call us anymore.
They won't call us. So we played with this not even a band, but a performance art group called The Haters, which was coming out of San Francisco. And they would bring in a bunch of stuff and create entropy, which means they would just start like breaking things or like.
And things would fall apart.
They brought in a bunch of couches, file cabinets. They bought in a box of lukewarm hot dogs they had got from a dumpster behind the CU game. Brought in this whole living room scene. And then they play like shrill music, like beep, 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 like from the old porn channels where like you don't get that channel, but it was just beeping and you can kind of see it.
Right.
Staticky boobs or whatever. And they just start cutting the couches with razor blades. And they're all wearing black hoods with like holes in them. And so, and they've done this all around the world.
Like the Mentors type of thing?
Yeah, it looks like the Mentors, but they have no instruments. They're performance art. And their whole thing in those shows, at least. I mean, they've done stuff where they grind microphones on a grinder. Or like I just saw one. They're still doing it. They had their 40th anniversary show.
The Haters are still a thing.
Yeah, and so they'll come and they wear all black in the hoods. And there was one where he actually had a plate or a table of sandpaper that's mic'd, and he was rubbing a bugle on it. And so it's like
that's the closest they got to making music.
Yeah. And so some of these shows where they had done this entropy, and so they just start throwing the stuffing from the couches and stuff, and then they start throwing throwing a hot dog or whatever, and so then the crowd throws the stuff back, and so it ends up being kind of like they did a show in Fort Collins where it was they were just ripping pages out of romance novels in front of the microphone, so it's just this ripping sounds, right? And then at the end, they take all the pages that they ripped off in the boxes and they poured them in the audience. So everyone's just pages, and then people are just like throwing
the pages.
Whatever. But then people got a hold of the books, and so it was like a full-on book fight. But nobody gets hurt somehow.
Right.
I don't know how. So this show at Quigley's, they had brought these like insane smoke bombs, like industrial grade smoke bombs, like whatever, military. They lit them off in 4 corners of the room. And it was just like, and the lights were on, so it was just white smoke. Everything's just white. You couldn't see 3 feet in front of you. but the sound is going, and people are still banging on file cabinets, and so now the whole audience is involved in this entropy. And then they left. There was like, they did their thing. They started the entropy. They don't need to finish it. And so then the CU security comes in after 20 minutes of this mayhem, and they're like, come to shut it all down. And there's like, everyone's like outside because they can't breathe because of the smoke.
Right.
And so and this is all on video, by the way. It's amazing to see. And so, of course, we left too because it's like, we don't want to be responsible for this. And then so then there was this whole letter writing campaign where I wrote a letter to the campus paper saying like the next day, like, I can't believe this show I was at last night. It was like mayhem and it was a mess. And you call that music? Like, I'm offended or whatever. And then the next day I wrote a letter as me, Casey Kasem from More Like Pinters. I was like, you just don't appreciate good music. You know, what are you listening to? And so I had this like fake letter writing campaign going back and forth.
What the fuck?
So then, of course, they never asked us back. We never got paid. I went to go get paid for that show. Like, and they were like, "You're not getting paid for this. You know, we had to take out like 3 dumpsters full of stuff, and you guys destroyed our club." And I was like, "Well, what got destroyed?" And they're like, "Well, there was couches and file cabinets and all this stuff." And I was like, "But that was all stuff that they brought in."
Right.
Like, what got destroyed of yours? And they're like, "Well, the carpet was dirty and like a chair got broken." And it's like, okay, well, you could take that out of our pay,
right?
You know, and however much time that somebody spent cleaning it up, but like we didn't destroy your club. Nothing got broken, really,
right?
You know.
Right.
And so they're like, but it did, you know. And so then
we just don't like you.
Yeah.
Like I can't just say we don't like you. You're weird. Go away.
And so Electric Hoedown was also about. So we got 2 songs out of that mayhem, you know. And then they called venues that we were playing after that and told them we were going to trash their club. Like they were vindictive, not just like, no, you're not getting paid. No, you're not ever playing on campus again. But they were actually vindictively trying to get us like,
man,
you know, it was crazy. But that's a digression.
So then Scramblehead,
I was like, I want to have
you
guns
got people
on stage
with real guns,
shooting blanks. And so these women come out, they march out with like fog and strobes and music, and they're like shooting the blanks just in the air. And I'm just like, I can't believe we did that. And what we had to go through the theater department and get them to sign off on we understood how to use weapons with blanks.
Right.
And you don't point it at someone's face or whatever.
Right.
You got to actually hurt, you know. And so we just proved that we knew how to shoot guns with blanks, and the theater department signed off on it. And so Club 156 signed off on it. It was ridiculous.
It's the same thing as like doing a show with a gun in it.
It's a theater, right?
Like,
you shoot a blank. It's a real, you know.
Like I did a student film one time, and they wanted to shoot blanks, and they were doing like a gangster movie sort of thing, and like they needed someone to come in and be like the firearms experts. My dad, who was a Denver police officer for 43 years, he had to come hang out on set just to make sure that the gun was being fired properly.
Yeah.
Like, so you guys just went right through the theater department, and that's how you got that legitimized.
Yeah.
That's
it's so
crazy.
weird. So even then, I'm still doing stuff that, I mean, it's like, it's shocking to some, entertaining to others, offensive to others. You know, I'm still doing the same kind of tenets of what I've learned about.
Right.
And Mark had done Foreskin 500, which they got on a big label. They toured a bunch. They got pretty far. And I didn't really do any music, but after after we quit, so quit in '92, and then so when was that the tribute album? Was that
and let's talk about that.
Yeah,
because I want to kind of talk about what happened between.
The next era, yeah.
So the tribute, so when I first met you in person, I found out, I can't remember how I found out, but I found out that you guys were putting together this Warlock Pinchers Imposters album. And I had always been a fan. I already had the song picked out that we wanted to do. And God,
and that's fourth year freshman.
Yeah, fourth year freshman. And I got a hold of you directly because the contact for the project was like, I think it was like you had a website up or something like that, and someone had told me about it. And the website had your email address, and it's like, hey, if you want to participate in this. And I wrote you directly, and I was like, huge fan for years. We would love to do Devil Without a Pause, blah, 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 blah. We ended up going to a small studio. I don't even remember whose studio it was. I remember it was like a basement studio in Five Points or something. I don't even remember who it was. We only recorded the one thing with them. And so we went there and we recorded our version of Devil Without a Pause and then a couple like 30-second songs that are in a folder somewhere that actually, before she passed away, Jordan sent to me.
Oh, wow.
Jordan sent me her entire archive of fourth year freshman stuff that we had never released, which was really cool. Some of it I have to get like the files recoded or whatever because they're just that old. You know what I mean? But yeah, and so I want to say that was probably 2000-ish.
Yeah, I think that's
2000,
that
2001-ish.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, it was probably pre 9/11, so we would probably say it was probably 2000.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and well, no, because I was out of high school so 2000, 2001, we'll say. So, what happened between you stopping music and Scramblehead, and then so that's like 92. Scramblehead goes till when?
Probably like 97.
Like
it was another like a 5-year.
Okay,
kind of
so
thing.
but that was mostly what you were doing at that point was that band, right?
Yeah.
So what happens from 97 up to 2000? What are you doing then?
Yeah, gosh. I'm trying to think of what I was probably still I wasn't making t-shirts. Dang, I don't know what I was doing back then.
Yeah.
Late 90s. Traveling a bunch, I think.
Traveling a bunch.
I went to Europe in like the early 90s, probably 92 or 93 and like just started traveling a bunch.
Right.
So I think like just kind of seeing stuff. I'll think of what I was actually
right.
if there's anything I was actually doing. Because that seems weird. But
so you got this just a whole bunch of musicians ranging from little guys like us to bands that were even littler than us at the time that were just like
bands I'd never heard of.
Yeah, just like artists, just like noise artists and stuff like that, all the way up to underground household names like the Melvins. You had Wesley Willis on there.
Yeah.
Wesley Willis was actually at the show. I met him at the show.
Cool.
And I'm outside and I see him walking up and someone goes, "That's Wesley Willis." And I go, "Dude, Wesley, it's so nice to meet you." And he like grabs my head and he goes, "Give me a rah." And I went, "Rah." And then he headbutted me. And he had that lump on his head that like, the rumor was he got that just from headbutting people so much, but who knows what it really was. And he's like, the whole show hanging out in the front, like reception. I mean, it's Monkey Mania, so reception area, whatever. But like the front room of Monkey Mania, and he's just drawing those pictures that like I'm sure now sell for thousands of dollars on the internet.
Stuff, yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, I love your drawings." And he goes, "You like it? You want to buy a drawing?" And I go, "How much are they?" And he's like, $300 or something like that, just selling like his little marker drawings and stuff. And there's the monitor that you've got going, the TV that is like playing the loop of all the interviews and stuff. So this is like a huge treat for me to like see the little museum of all the art that you guys did.
All the flyers and the meat cannon.
Yeah, and the meat, just all that stuff. And then, the show was just this like wild Monkey Mania party. And I remember meeting you and being so just like surprised by like what a nice guy you were. You know what I mean? Because I think I had this image in my head, I guess, of Casey Kasem from the Warlock Pinchers just being this like crazy punk rock guy.
Right.
Like, I had no frame of reference.
Aggro.
Yeah,
like
and I met
agent
you
of chaos.
and you were just such a nice, friendly, sweet dude. And I remember that, like, when I tell people about stories about meeting your heroes and things like that, like I've told that people before, being like, yeah, when I met Andrew, Casey Kasem from Warlock Pinchers, he just turned out to be completely the opposite of what I might have expected.
Yeah.
And that's something that stuck with me forever. But tell me a little bit about what prompted you to do that Imposters album and kind of like what happened as a result of doing that.
Yeah. So out of all the Warlock Pinchers, like I'm the social one, right? I'm the one who's like talking to people after the show and selling the merch and doing the stuff. And then after we quit, I'm the one who's out on the town. I'm going to shows. I'm seeing bands. And so people were always bugging me, like, you guys got to play again. I was like, no. We erased our drum machine. We're never playing again. Like, you know.
We erased the drum machine.
So that was our way of like, no, we can't play. Because, you know, people are like, oh, you guys should get back together for this benefit. It's like, no, we erased the drum machine. We can't.
Right.
We can't rewrite all those drums, you know.
Right.
So, but I'm the one who's like talking to people, and like people were like clamoring, right? People who never got to see us, and so, and it was actually not my idea. This guy came up with this idea. He's like, oh, you should do like a tribute thing. Like a bunch of bands are doing that, you know? And like, I was like, cool. And he wanted to do it. He wanted to, and I was like, okay, what do you need from me? Like, do it. Like, I'll help or whatever. And he really wanted Mike Patton to do one of our songs. Like he thought that would be the coolest thing ever. So he spent like months trying to get a hold of Mike Patton to try to do a Warlock Pincher song. And so,
did you ever hear back from him?
I don't think so.
Because he didn't end up being on it.
No, he wasn't on it. And so, but that guy, I was like, he'd never put out a record, CD, whatever. He had no really wherewithal to put out an album, market an album, get bands for an album.
Right.
And he didn't have any money. But he had this idea.
He was like, it would just be so neat.
So he started the idea, and so I was just like, okay, you know, I don't know what you're doing. I'm going to actually start doing it. So I like started putting out the word, finding bands, and then doing the art, doing the stuff. And it was like the hardest thing about that whole thing was editing it down to like who can't be on it, right?
Right.
I have like 30 submissions.
And you put almost all of them on there.
I think I put all of them on.
Yeah, dude, there was a ton on there.
Because it's like anyone who, to me, it was like anyone who's going to put the effort to submit something to be on this should be on it.
I can't believe you got that many submissions.
Yeah, it was crazy. And stuff, people
I'm sure if you put it out now, you would get like 300 submissions or something like that. Just because there's so many more bands and it's so much easier to connect people.
And what we find out, okay, so we did that and ended up, I was like, I can't believe some of the cool stuff that people did too. Like they went pretty far. Some of the stuff were kind of straight ahead, like
there was really weird stuff on there too.
But some stuff was like, the Friends Forever thing where they had the Anthem 5 lyrics and they went around Casa Bonita and they got people to say like one or two lines from it. And so so like I am the magistrate or whatever. And it's like, so they got kids, they had teachers, they got adults, parents. And then you can hear the mariachis in the background, but they're all at Casa Bonita, and they just got people, and then they just pasted it all together.
That's
and they
really
have this
cool.
like speed rap, Anthem 5 speed rap of all different people. I was like, that's the coolest idea ever. Like,
that's
people
really
came
cool.
Up with really neat.
I got to go back through and listen to that.
Yeah,
it's on all the streaming services, right? Like, is it uploaded to anything?
Imposters you can get from the Warlock Pinchers page. But that's not on the streaming.
Is it streaming anywhere, or you just got to buy the CD?
You could actually the CDs are sold out, but I have download codes for it.
Okay,
I'll just give you a download code.
Cool.
Yeah.
Ethan, do you got a split, man? Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you, man. Thank you. It's just still rolling, right?
Low battery.
Oh, that's okay. I'll plug it in.
Okay.
I'll plug it in.
And so so we put out this thing, 30 bands. We had the party. It was so fun. It really it brought it back around. It's like, man, this is such a cool thing that we did, and it's still going.
Right.
And to this day, I keep hearing about more and more very successful musicians who were Warlock Pincher fans.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like Ween is my favorite band of all time, right? And they have this huge following, but they're not a very commercially popular band. But so many really successful artists that are household names refer to them as one of their influences.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you guys, like, who are some of the people that you've heard from?
So Marilyn Manson.
Is it Warlock Pinchers fan?
Yep.
What?
Yep. A friend of mine was on Marilyn Manson's bus. And he was starting to do big shows. I mean, Scramble had actually opened up for Marilyn Manson.
Really?
But yeah, they found our CD on his bus. They're like, oh, you know this? It's like, oh yeah, it's like
that's so cool.
Yeah, and then West Borland.
Yeah, Warlock Pinchers fan.
And like, say what you will about Limp Bizkit or whatever, but like Wes Borland was like, I mean, awesome guitar player. He was like the weird dude with the mask, the makeup
he was playing,
dude. And,
he was playing the music that was going on at the time.
Yeah, yeah, and he played with a bunch of other stuff. But he was in town, and I met him, and he was like, "Oh my God, Circus Sized Peanuts got me through my junior year of high school."
No fucking way.
He was like, we listened to that every day. We were so angry teens, and that was our outlet.
Right.
You know, we're like yelling, sitting in the car, yelling along with the. You know, I was like, damn, that is so cool.
Well, dude, there was nothing like it. Like,
yeah.
Like, you know, you listen to like the lyrics to like Morrissey Rides a Cock Horse, and it's like, I didn't even know who Morrissey was.
Right.
I didn't even.
You want to yell about him,
dude. I didn't even hear the Smiths until I got older.
Oh wow.
And like that song, like kept me off of Morrissey. You know what I mean? Like I never took any interest in. Dude, it's like the people who hate the Eagles because the Big Lebowski told them to, or the people who hate Led Zeppelin because Screeching Weasel told them to. Like, dude, like that song kept me from listening to Morrissey or the Smiths.
Oh,
like,
man.
to this day.
That's
like, it's
amazing.
just like, nah, Morrissey Rides a Cock Horse. I'm not interested.
Preemptively. It's funny because that song still has so much relevance because Morrissey is still around.
And he's still an asshole.
A bigger and bigger dick every day.
He's a bigger dick than he ever was,
Ever
man.
was.
Like you guys just thought at that time, you guys just thought he was kind of pretentious and a boner, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
it
now
was like,
he's
we
like-
want to have a song that's all obscenities, right?
Right.
Like that, maybe PMRC will put a label on our album finally. But yeah, but then it ends up being like, he's just a bigger and bigger asshole even now.
Right.
And there's a podcast called Convince Me to Like This Band. Have you heard of that?
No.
It's getting going now. I think they've aired a couple episodes.
It's like your favorite band sucks, but they're actually trying to open up the conversation for a case to be made for bands that they hate.
So they take a super fan and a super hater live on the podcast, and they debate it. And so they were doing an episode. So they did Slayer. I think they did Fish, maybe. But they did this Morrissey episode. So they actually flew me to New York. It was in Jersey City. And I met up with this guy who's a super fan. He's actually has his own Morrissey tribute band in L.A. where Morrissey lives.
You were the con? You were the...
And I was the con because Morrissey rides a cock horse. And we just had like an hour-long debate about...
Who won the debate?
But the impetus is on him. He's got to convince me to like this band.
Okay.
Right?
What were some of his arguments?
He was just like... the way it makes you feel, and the lyrics are so poetic, and like I don't really remember, but I was like, but he's such a dick, you know, and so,
That's your argument to everything, just like but him being a dick, that whole thing.
But I actually, because of that, I actually sat down and listened to Morrissey to try to find like something, right? And I watched videos, and I was like, okay, what are the songs that the real fans really gravitate towards and the albums? And so we talked like album per album and picked songs and talked about videos. And
you like prepared for this podcast.
Yeah, I listened to more Morrissey for that podcast because I wanted to I didn't want to just be like, yeah, he's a dick. Like that. That wouldn't be, that's a 5-second conversation, not an hour-long conversation. Right. So we went pretty far into it and we talked about it, and I was like, okay, but when he makes this video and it has nothing to do with the song, and it's like, you're saying the lyrics are so important, but everyone just, he's like dancing around with the Band-Aids on his nipples or whatever. And it's like, this was actually a very serious song that didn't get conveyed in the video. And like, so I was trying to make him defend those things.
Right.
So it ended up being, it's great. It hasn't aired yet. This one hasn't aired. I think it's this month though. Like maybe in the next couple weeks.
And what's the name of the podcast
Convince Me to Like This Band.
Convince Me to Like This Band.
Yeah,
so,
we'll find a
stay
link.
tuned for the Morrissey episode of Convince Me to Like This Band.
Yeah.
That's so fucking good,
and
man.
so, but there's also, as my partner says, she's like, she didn't know Warlock Pinchers. She knew of it back then, but she never went and saw it because it was satanic. And she was
like, I have no interest in this satanic band.
But her friends would go, so she would go hang out outside with her, with her friends and like not see us, or whatever.
Right.
So she didn't know, but she has come to learn a lot about it because people come up to me all the time or they would talk about it. But she's like, I feel like there's two different kinds of Warlock Pincher fans. There's the Morrissey Rides a Cock Horse fans, and there's the Jesus on a Urinal Cake fans. So in other words,
So what's the difference between
so the
the
Morrissey
two?
Rides a Concourse? It's like that was like our, if we had one, that was our hit.
Right,
That's
right.
the one that everyone remembers. They know all the words. It was very, in your face, whatever.
When it's goofy and
It's
fun
goofy
and
and
silly.
it's funny, and like everyone loves to hate Morrissey, so it's kind of fun. Even Morrissey fans like it because it's actually, because when they say like, and when Johnny Marr left, they stole his baggy shirts. Like that's funny, right? Because Johnny Marr did leave, and it's like, as much as it's a stream of obscenities, we're actually talking about real things in the song. So, yeah, even Morrissey fans sometimes like it. But when people come up to me, like they mention that song, or they mention something like "Devil Without a Pause," or
Devil Without a Pause was always my favorite.
yeah. A guy came up a couple weeks ago and talked about Jesus on a urinal cake, which was like the most blasphemous song. Like, she's like, "What's this urinal cake song?" She's like, "I've never heard of that."
Those are the people who are like considered Warlock Pincher's like a heavy, brutal band.
Yeah. So the Morrissey was like the funny, like yelling obscenities, but yeah, like the Devil Without a Pause and the urinal cake were like the blasphemous, satanic, like whatever. So
we got the Beast too.
Yeah, we got the Beast. So it came into like two categories of fans, and that's her observation, having never.
That's an interesting observation.
She just sees it from people coming up and talking about it.
Yeah, that's really cool, man.
But she made me recite the lyrics for. She's like, "What is this Jesus on a urinal cake?" No, I've never heard anyone talk about that until now. And I like start thinking about it, and I was like, "Damn, that's like Mary, Mary, quite contrary, raped by God, a busted cherry." There were no coat hangers in that day, so she dropped Jesus in some hay. He lived, he laughed, he loved, he lost. They nailed that fucker to the cross.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy shit, that's the most blasphemous song ever.
Right.
Did we do that?
It sounds like the lyrics to like a typo negative song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something that is supposed to be deliberately dark and blasphemous.
And that was Circus-Sized Peanuts.
But you were
right?
trying
that
to be
was
like
the Clowns
goofy and
album,
silly
right?
at the time, right?
But we, I mean, that was there again, King Scratchy. I think he had a lot of darkness, a lot of fun darkness to him. And he show up at practice with like this stuff, and we're like, damn, that's out there.
Yeah.
And the kind of stuff he wrote a lot of stuff, and then I would help and we'd finish it. Or like I wrote some stuff like Meet Goaty Woaty, which was like the inside joke song
what's the
of the
Goaty
century.
Woaty thing? Because I had to, when we were learning Devil Without a Pause, this is back before you could find lyrics on the internet.
Yeah.
So I was transcribing everything on my own. And I didn't have some like phrase trainer to slow it down or anything. I'm like, you listen, you
to it
pause.
like 100 times trying to figure out.
So I'm like
what are they
listening to
saying?
it and trying to learn the lyrics, and I'm transcribing them, and I had to email you.
Yeah, that's right.
I had to email you. I was like,
what are you saying
Power
here?
Evil what? And you just wrote back Goaty Woaty. And I was like, oh, of course. So what's the Goaty Woaty thing?
So we were on tour, and there was some dog, some like goofy dog with a waggy tail came up to us, came up to our van in the desert somewhere, and E-Rock got like enamored by this dog, and he was just like, oh, happy dog, whatever. But he had like a little goatee, like a little like white, maybe it was like a black dog with like a white, I don't remember. But he's like, oh, Goaty Woaty and stuff. It's like E-Rock's Baby Talk is our next song,
That's so fucking good.
But that song specifically was like our inside joke song of about touring, But in the
Devil
song,
Without a Pause was
Meet Goaty Woaty.
Meet Goaty Woaty.
Yeah, so Meet Goaty Woaty, it's like, and even in the lyrics, it's like, meet Goaty Woaty, who's a dog, not a goat. Because it's like, oh, we told you what it's about right there. But we talk about Bob's Soda Shack, which was like just some weird side of the road gas station with this one-eyed guy selling soda on the side of the road. Just like it was all these weird like inside jokes that all crammed into one song. Like, that was like my method of song.
Dude, most of our songs in the early parts of our probably most of our songs up until the last 5 years were inside jokes.
Yeah.
Just straight inside jokes from start to finish, man. Or like references to movies or references to like rap songs, like Eazy-E songs and stuff like that. And it's just so interesting that I listened to so much of you guys, and that ended up happening without deliberately moving forward, like without that being my intent from the get-go.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's like I'm not I'm not so much a storyteller, or like I'm not trying to tell you what mood I'm in. Like I'm not trying to be poetic. I just want to yell and jump around, right? So it's like, what am I going to talk about?
Right.
So what am I inspired about? I'm inspired about the weird guy I met on the side of the road or whatever.
Right.
So it's like, and all these things, it's like, you just got to say something. And you end up saying the stuff that's
You write what you know.
Seems non sequitur, but there's actually a story behind it. But then if you actually learn the story, it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know that's what that was about.
Yeah.
But people could interpret it however they want, even if it was as per like a beautiful poem. Like you don't know what the songwriter meant.
Right.
But you know what you got out of it.
Right.
And this is the same with like a non sequitur lyrics. You know?
Right.
Or if it's just chanting Satan. That's
Well,
like
it's like you'll look at some of the most famous lyrics in history, and it's like there'll be things that are non sequiturs that don't make any sense, and you just find and you'll get like people who like they go back and forth about what this meant, and some interviewers asking them what it means, and then as soon as they come out, it's almost always some sort of inside joke or just like, oh, that's a reference to a joke that we had in the studio about da 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 da.
Right, and you're like, man, the whole thing,
like
American
that whole thing,
Pie, it's like, what are all the things? So. It's awesome.
There's a breakdown on YouTube about American Pie that's pretty fascinating,
cool.
and like every line in that song is a reference to something from that time period.
Right.
I'll send you the breakdown and
that sounds cool. Because I've talked about it with people a bunch. Trying to think about what the
you
things
hear
are.
it so many times, and it's just like. It's just another fucking song that's been on the radio 1,000 times. It's just another song that's like, oh, here, Don McLean, American Pie again,
Yeah.
But then you see the breakdown of the lyrics, and you're like, wow, that is a very clever and thoughtful and profound history of this very significant time in rock and roll. Like it's really interesting. I couldn't even begin to tell you what all the references are, but I'll send it to you.
But it's clever because you don't think of it at first, and you find out later
what
it is. And it's like I find almost everything is more interesting like that to me.
When you find out what it means later.
It's like, oh wow, I figured it out or whatever. Like it's like figuring out a movie that's like, oh, that guy is representing like the devil or whatever. It's like. I like the figuring out and not knowing while I'm first seeing it.
Right.
And
you don't want someone to come right over and just tell you everything.
Right. It's
like
not
you want to
like
discover.
an action movie or whatever. It's like seeing the fighting or whatever. It's like, but who was that guy that walked by and then he shows up later? It's like you figure out like the reference points. And
you start to pick up and then you figure out one little nugget and you'll tell everybody about it. It's like, did you know that, or like in Blade Runner, here's an example, like from Blade Runner. Did you know it turns out that he was a replicant the whole time? That's what that means. That's what the origami thing was, the origami crane. You find that out, and it's like you can't shut up about it. You know? That discovery stuff is super fun.
Discovery, it's awesome. It's super cool.
So what ended up happening as a result of doing the Imposters record? Because that was a ton of fun for us. That was a treat, and I never really saw anything happen after the fact. It's like 30 bands get together and are doing versions of your songs, and then what happens after that?
I would say not a lot happened. Like, I had the CDs, I sold them at Wax Track, sold them at that show. It was almost like that was it. It was the getting the people to do the songs, and then them getting to play, the people who got to play them.
Right.
And just being on the album. Because, our band did not exist in the least, right? It existed as a web page.
Right.
And so, but people ordered it, not a ton, but I think it was really that show and everything leading up to that show was what the album was. It was about finding people and meeting people and people recording the song of the band that they never even got to see live. Like, I think that was it. It wasn't that
so many
album
people
was gonna propel Warlock Pinchers to even bigger small fame, it was literally, I think that was the pinnacle of it, was the release of it.
Right. That's so cool.
So it's
this just occurred to me. I was outside of the show that night and just kind of like watching all the people that are coming into the show and getting ready for it. And a priest walks up.
Oh.
And he was a young guy, glasses, goatee, short hair, priest, like the collar and everything. And he comes walking up, and I went, wait a minute, you're a Warlock Pinchers fan? He goes, oh, yeah, I got into them, back in the 80s and 90s and when they were still playing shows and stuff like that. And then shortly thereafter, I went to seminary. Like he was a fan before he went to the seminary, like, and didn't feel uncomfortable going to the show because he got it.
Right.
It wasn't,
right.
He knew that you guys weren't a satanic band. He knew that it was a big goof and this big, like, fun thing. And that really
That's
stood out
awesome.
to me.
That
And I
is
thought it
so
was
cool.
a super cool
That
thing.
is so cool.
Yeah. I'd never seen a priest at a show before, let
No.
alone, like, an underground punk rock show at fucking Monkey Mania.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
It was really cool.
Dang. Well, yeah. And during that time, during that Monkey Mania era was when I started Get Your Going, which is my, at that time it was a sing-along project.
Okay, tell me about Get Your Going. What is
So, yeah, that was probably late 90s, I guess. So I just sing along with obscure music because I have a lot of obscure records and just weird stuff and like stuff that I really like that I want to play for people, right? But like you can't invite everyone to your house and play them the weird things. And like I've done DJ nights where I'm like, oh, I'm going to play all like songs about clowns and whatever. But you're at bar playing all this very curated stuff that you want people to hear, and they're
but
just
they're not
talking.
paying
They're just
attention,
talking.
right? It's just background noise.
But what I realized, if you perform it, at least 1/3 of the people are listening to it, kind of
Right.
because they have to. Because
So you're just singing on top of the
singing
records?
right on top of the records, and
That's just to get them to pay attention to this music?
yeah. And so the first show was the Chevrolet Safe Driving album from the '60s. You got this record when you bought a Chevy. You got the record. My friend Kent Roper found it at a thrift store, and we listened to that thing like backwards and forwards. There was songs. There was a song that was like Simon and Garfunkel type song about like rain is a gentle thing, but not when you're driving. and then they had like the one that was the hothead behind the wheel, and it was like crazy banjo, ding, like, and it's for sure, not maybe, that a grown-up baby doesn't belong behind the wheel. So that's like the hothead, the
Right.
And so those songs are so good, and they all.
And you like
there
want
was like
people
a
to listen
Jefferson
to 'em.
Airplane-y type one, and like I was like, God, this music's so good. So I just sang along with it because I knew all the words, and they were funny songs.
How did people respond to that?
People thought it was really weird.
They thought it was really weird.
But they're like, what are you like, what are you doing? And I was like, this is this great album. And then it's like, I'm turning them on to this album. But also, because I understand it's probably kind of boring to watch a person sing along with the record. So I had video. So I had like crash test dummies and car crashes from like driver's ed type stuff.
Right.
Slow-mo. Like I found these like crash test dummy things where they would put a doll in the back seat. So it's crash test dummies and then like a baby doll, not a crash test dummy doll, but and this baby doll's just like flying into the windshield like slow-mo. And so it was just kind of something fun to watch while this guy's singing these goofy songs. And so, I mean, I think people liked it. I think it was, but my whole thing was, it was something to talk about. Like I went to the show and there was 5 bands. Like, I don't know who the bands were, but this guy sang these like driving songs, or like I did one of all songs from Waffle House. Because at Waffle House on the jukebox, they had all these songs about Waffle House.
Really?
Yes, and they're amazing. A lot of them are like country, like budding country stars.
There's songs about Waffle House?
Yes, like a lot. There's at least probably 25 or 30.
So every show was a different theme.
Every show was different, and the reason was this: because of Monkey Mania, when I would go to Monkey Mania, I would just show up. I don't know who these bands are. They're like the world's smallest bands touring, and they know somebody in Denver, and they get them the show. And like, Josh, you set this show up. Mm-hmm. And I would always see at least one thing that I'm like, damn, had I not come to this just to see what's going to happen? I have no idea who these bands are. And I'm so glad I came because I saw this thing I had no expectation for.
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, how can I, I'm not in a band.
How can I create something?
How can I create something? And I'm not really even inspired by like, a lot of people like, oh, you want to be in a band? We could play a band. And I was like, I don't have any lyrics I want to write. I was thinking about, but I have music I want to convey. So these songs. And so.
That you wanted to celebrate. You wanted people to be aware of.
Yeah. And so I would perform these songs live with video or other goofball things. And it was because I wanted people to come to something with no expectations. So I never would
Right.
repeat it, right? People are like, I didn't get to see that Waffle House show. Are you going to do that? I was like, no, I already did it.
I already did Waffle
I did
House.
it. Like, come next time, not because you know what's going to happen. It's because you don't know what's going to happen. So I wanted to create a thing that people would talk about that happened that they had no expectation for. You know?
Right.
And even if they hated it, because I've learned a long time ago, even if they hated it, they'll talk about it. If it's weird, they'll talk about it.
Right.
And so I did that for like many years, and my goal was that not more than one person in the room has ever sang those songs. I mean, ever heard those songs.
Right.
It was obscure songs because
As obscure as you could possibly
it wasn't.
get.
It wasn't karaoke. I wasn't singing songs that everyone's heard of, and it's funny. You know, it's like no. I'm conveying music because I want you to hear these songs.
And the only reason, the fact that I'm up here singing along is incidental.
Right.
It's only to get you to pay attention to the song.
Yeah. And
That's so fucking cool.
So I did that for quite a while, and then there was a show at Bar, and do you know Jermaine?
Of course.
She was putting on the show, and she's like, "Hey, do you want to do your Get Your Going thing?" And I was like, it was actually 2010 because I was working on the World I Pinch Your reunion stuff, and I was like, I don't have time to do a Get Your Going thing, I have to learn a whole album.
Right.
I make ridiculous outfits.
You have to make all the multimedia
video,
stuff.
Like
yeah.
it's a lot of work. So I just like I don't have time. I was like, can I do a PowerPoint presentation?
And so that's when you started doing the PowerPoint stuff.
Yeah. And so she's like, sure, whatever. Like, cool. Show up at 8 or whatever. And so I did a PowerPoint, which is even more ridiculous than singing along with obscure records, because at least that's music.
And it's a
right?
really funny art form. You know what I mean? Because
yeah.
PowerPoint is used in so many applications, like you know, a TED Talk or an office presentation or something like that. And you're literally just using PowerPoint as
at
your
a
medium.
concert, right? Like
That's
I'm
so
an
cool.
opening act with bands, but people started wanting me to do it because I could go on first. I don't have any equipment.
Right.
I mean, I could set up a screen and I have a projector, but I just set it up in front of all the stuff. So it's a very low overhead opening act, you know? And also it's like, well, no band wants to play first, but I'll go on first because
So what were you doing for the PowerPoint stuff?
So different every time. I would never announce what it was going to be about. That first one was at Bar, and I did a presentation about the history of Bar and that building. And so I'm like, there's this building in downtown Denver, and people call it Bar, but that's not the real name. It's Karaoke Cafe. And like, it's like, there's pictures of the building that you're in because you're at the show at Bar. And it's people are like, there's people like talking, people like, play some fucking music. And like, I got a laser pointer talking about.
You're like, we'll get to the music, please.
Yeah, and it's
this
like,
is very important.
But it had been a brothel. It had been a chili restaurant. It was closed for a long time, and then it became this bar, the Karaoke Cafe. But because on the corner it just said bar,
Everybody called it
and
bar.
so then
Which bar are you going to? The bar.
Yeah. And so then people, like punk kids started hanging out there, and bike messengers started hanging out there. So then I was like, then it took this turn. So in the daytime, it was like a bunch of quiet drunks, and then the loud young people.
It was
would
all the
come in.
winos during the day.
Yeah. And so then I'd be like, this is a typical night at Bar. And it's a picture from like 20 minutes ago. That's in my fucking thing. So now I'm talking about you, the audience. You're up here. And I was like, and then they started having bands here, like this band. It's like the woman, she was like a drummer singer, and she had played right before me.
Right.
And she's in my slideshow.
That's so good.
So it was just funny and weird, and like, a third of the people, it's my rule of thirds. A third of the people who either knew me or were there to see it or just were fans of just the show, and they got a good table up front, are listening. The middle people are just like, I don't know what this guy's doing. There's like a laser pointer, and they're like, they're kind of paying attention, and the people in the back are just talking loud and yelling to play some fucking music. I was like, wow, this was amazing. Like, that was just an experiment, right? And people took to it real, because it's made to fail, right?
Right.
If one person likes it, that's a success, because it's like, who wants to see a PowerPoint at a concert?
Right.
And so it's amazing. And so people are like, oh, that was actually very informative. Like,
Yeah,
that was cool.
That was fun.
And it was like, I saw myself on your slide. And so I started doing it, and I don't think I really ever did a sing-along one after that. And the pinnacle of that whole thing was then going on tour with the Melvins. doing PowerPoints.
You did PowerPoint on tour
I
with
did
the Melvins?
PowerPoints every night of the week from Minneapolis to Denver with the Melvins.
How many PowerPoints did you do?
I feel like I did like 7 or 8.
And each one was a different subject.
Yeah.
And you just worked on them all day, like.
Yeah. Well, okay. So in that case, I did repeat them because because I was out of town, and no one knew anything about. So I took my favorite ones and I did them.
Oh, okay.
And I let all the guys in the Melvins pick which one I'm gonna do. So I would have like my slides, and the slideshow is like how I got into doing these slideshows, and there's like here's some topics that I've talked about, and I would have this list, and then I would look at Jeff Pincus from Butthole Surfers was in Melvins doing that tour. I would look at some of the Melvins guys, and I was like, what do we want to hear? Or I like ask the audience, like, out of these topics, what do you want me to talk about? And so I did a different one every night. So
That's
I
really
used my,
cool. You let
yeah.
the audience pick what the and then you would just go right into
go right into it and be like, here's whatever history of marching band uniforms.
I think this would be a very appropriate time to pivot just a little bit and mention something that you mentioned to me at the beginning of the show, which is you have never done a drug.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You have never done a drug ever. Because people might listen to some of the stuff that you've done and think that they were like drug-addled rambling.
Who is this whacked-out hippie up
but
there?
But you have never done a drug.
Yeah.
You've never been a drinker.
Yeah.
None of it. How did you manage to go through this life of being around musicians and maniacs and artists and all this stuff, and it never appealed to you?
Yeah.
Even being at one of the biggest party colleges in the nation, you were at CU in the punk rock scene. How did you never have occasion to even try drugs?
Yeah. I would attribute it probably to my older brother who did do drugs. He wasn't like a crazy druggie or whatever, but he did drugs. He drank, in high school, whatever. And I was so anti-peer pressure. It's like I'm in the punk scene, and like
you were so
in high
anti-peer
school.
pressure. Is that just like something you've always been anti-peer pressure, like even when you were a little kid?
I think so. I think it was just like, I want to do something different. If someone tells me to do something, I want to do something different.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, this is cool. So I was like, I don't want to do what the cool kids are doing, so I was trying to
Getting fucked up was cool.
Yeah,
so
always
you
forge my way a different way. And I was in the punk scene in Denver in the mid 80s, right?
Right.
Hanging around downtown with all the punk rockers. They're drinking, they're doing acid, it's like, but I wasn't anti-drug. I just didn't do it myself.
You were just
so
anti-conformity.
Yeah. It was my ultimate non-conformity. Was like, I'm not going to do the thing that everyone else is doing, which is drinking and drugs. And
that's it. There wasn't like any sort of huge like, I watched so and so go down this path of darkness. You were just like, I'm not going to do it.
I used to hang out with my brother, drinking, smoking pot, whatever. It's like I enjoyed the conversations, with my brother and his friends or whatever, and like the punk kids and the, the concerts and the shows. It's like, but it's also like, maybe like loss of control. Like I don't want to, I was always the guy with the car too.
Right.
So it's like I couldn't drink. I was like giving all the kids rides home to the suburbs from downtown, And so it was like and so at some point I was just like, no, I'm never going to do that. So I never drank. I never did a drug, And so, but I'm not anti it, right? Because most of my experience, and even smoking, I never smoked, And so, but I was always around. I was in the dance clubs. I was at the shows. Like everyone's smoking. It's just it's a thing that they do.
Right.
Like I'm just different, And so, so it's like, well, people are, you're straight edge. Like, how long you been straight edge? I was like, oh, no, I'm not straight edge. Straight edge is like anti, right?
That's
like,
an ideology.
Yeah, that's an ideology where it's like, you shouldn't do this. I don't do this. It's wrong. Something's wrong with it.
Right.
And I was like, no, I've never been straight edge. Don't get me right on that.
Like for you, it was an afterthought. It's just like, this is just a thing that I happen not to do.
Yeah.
Like it's. I mean, shit, it's the same as like people who don't get tattoos or it's just something that you never picked up. Like I don't chew gum, you know what I mean? Or I'm not really big on sweets, that sort of thing. You just never picked it up.
Yeah, and I remember a guy at Lions there once. He was like, "Okay, but how are you gonna know if you never do it? How are you gonna know what it's like? You're missing out on that in life." And I was like,
"You're not missing out on it."
I was like, "How are you gonna know what it's like to have never been drunk?"
Right.
You're never gonna know because you've already done it. You've done all the.
Right.
And it's like, so it's just another interesting kind of facet I think that people find that they didn't know about me or whatever. Because I'm always around it, and I'm not straight edge, and I'm not anti, and so. But that said, too, like I'm interested in like especially nowadays with like the mixology because I'm into like wacky food and drinks and displays, and so like someone will have like a fancy looking drink, and like so I take a sip of someone's drink to find out what it tastes like because I'm not like allergic to it. I'm not, it's like I'm interested.
Right.
And like I remember when somebody had Jägermeister, and I was like, damn, that looks like coffee, like, and I was like, can I try that? Like, what does that taste like? I tasted it. I was like, wow, that's like. It kind of is like the coffee of beer or whatever.
It's black licorice.
Yeah,
is what it tastes
it's
like.
weird. So I get to live this very interesting life and experience where I'm around these things, and I can
You get
see
to observe it
and see what people are experiencing, but just not partake in it. It's just a unique case that I've created.
That's
for
really
myself.
interesting.
Yeah.
As I just after everything that you've been and not just everything you've told us so far, but like. The other stuff that we're about to get into, because I want to talk about like when you're doing the PowerPoint stuff. Is that before or after you were doing the ventriloquist dummy shit at like with Oracle Dance or like teaming up with like Ukulele Loki and things like that, like doing the variety show kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Was that around the same time?
I'd say it's all around the same time. Yeah, because to me it was like, and a lot of that came from. Something like Lion's Lair, right? I hung out at Lion's Lair, but when it was like the bar. But what bar did is exactly what happened at Lion's Lair. It's a dive bar on Colfax. Kind of hip kid. They weren't called hipsters back then, but like they were the cool people,
kids,
the underground people started hanging out there because I think they would let in underage people too, and like so because I was going to Lion's Lair. Yeah, I was like 19, right? Just show up. My friends are there. All the regulars are there, and then these young people. And it was like they were just kind of blending in. But then it was like young people start DJing there. And then young people get jobs there. And then they're like, we should have a band play. And I was like, no, like Lions Lair is such a cool dive bar.
Cool how it is.
It's a dive bar, and it's like it's the weirdo.
And
like,
you wanted
drunks.
to hang out there even though you weren't drinking.
Yeah, because it was a fun environment. I would go visit friends, and it was fun. And it was like I could go. I would take the bus from Boulder to Denver, get off downtown, and then take multiple buses to get home to South Colorado Boulevard. And so I could just get off the bus and hang out at Lions Lair for a while, and then get back on the 15 and keep my route home.
Right.
And so, and I could stop there on any Friday night, and I knew I would know somebody. And they were like, some people were older than me too, and it was like interesting people I thought were cool. But there was also like a crazy piano player named Dinky who would like play like naughty songs on the piano and dance with the vacuum cleaner and stuff. And I was like, this is weird. Life is weird, man. Like, and I'm in a school for electrical engineering in Boulder, and then I'm out like down on East Colfax watching the guy dance with the vacuum cleaner. I'm living like a fulfilling, bizarre life. Right. It had nothing to do with drugs. Right. It's bizarre just as it is. And so, but when people start working there, and they're like, we should have bands. And so I was really like fighting against.
You were fighting against having bands?
Yeah. Yeah. By that point, there was tons of places that had bands. We don't need another place with bands. Like, let's do weird stuff. And so I did like a ventriloquist puppet show. And I did where it was like I had ventriloquist doll puppets with like I built like a cardboard puppet show.
Yeah. I remember.
And then pre-recorded conversations. And so I call it ventriloquist lip syncing because I never really learned ventriloquism.
Right.
Like talking.
No, you would just sit behind the puppet theater thing. And they were ventriloquist dolls, but you're not sitting there throwing your voice or anything.
No, it's all pre-recorded. So the ventriloquists are lip syncing to a tape. Like as opposed to actual ventriloquist puppets who are lip syncing to a guy talking without moving his mouth. Totally different.
Right.
And so I was trying to create funny, weird stuff. And then I did this Olivia Newton-John impersonation act at Lions Lair. And I was just like, this should be like the weird, bizarro theater of people doing weird stuff. And so, of course, I lost the battle because it did become...
They're like, no.
not only to become a venue for bands and like hipsters working there, but the hipsters bought it, and then it became like an actual venue for promoters, and now it's like touring bands play there. I mean, it's like it was. I fought it and lost, but and I got into the burlesque scene.
Right.
I knew people who had started kind of that burlesque scene in Denver, and I was helping with the shows and helping promote the shows and doing the contracts,
Right.
some of the marketing
remember
and
that.
like the merch and stuff, because I knew all that from being in bands and doing all my stuff.
Right.
And so sometimes I was like, I'm the Santa Claus for the Santa act or whatever.
Right.
So I was on stage a couple times, but I didn't really perform until I did the ventriloquist act, where I had rigged up a ventriloquist puppet with a remote control. So I could have a remote and his mouth is moving when no one's touching him, because that's the most creepy thing about
Right.
like Twilight Zone and stuff. The ventriloquist dummy moved and no one's touching him. Not
Right.
even the ventriloquist, or he's the personification of the guy's alter ego. And so I rigged up the ventriloquist puppet to have a remote, and I did the burlesque act where he was a magician and he had his lovely assistant. He's like, okay, folks, now I'm going to lie on the bed of nails. And so I'm backstage with the remote and the mic doing it live.
Right.
And so the lovely assistant places him on the bed of nails, right? And she's holding him, so it looks like, oh, she's the ventriloquist, I guess. Like in the audience, you don't see. So she sets him down, but his face is facing the audience, and then now
His mouth starts moving.
he's still talking, and no one's holding him, and people are like freaking out.
Yeah.
And so, I took him to karaoke once, and when I first built that, and so I set him on the chair. And then I went and sat down. They called him up. Eddie Spaghetti, you're next. And I set him on the chair. And then I just went and hid under the table. And so no one really saw it because they're just like, what's the puppet? And then the song starts. And even the ventriloquist, the karaoke
host.
DJ was like, what's going on here? But I got the mic and the remote. And he sings, you got to fight for your right to party, sitting on the chair. And he's like, you got to fight. You're right. Because for some reason, ventriloquist puppets always have the same kind of like, hi, I'm the puppet.
Yeah.
So I was doing performance still, just not in bands. I was
Right.
performing a PowerPoint. I was singing along with songs. I was building weird.
Right. Well, and it was
puppet shows
in
and-
line with the spirit of Warlock Pinchers, in that it was like performance art. It was in creating an experience, and maybe if a couple people like us, that's victory. But we really want to go just like see what happens.
Right.
We just want to
And
just do some weird, goofy shit.
It's
and see what
something to
happens.
talk about. And
Yeah.
I said I don't mind going first, right? Because I do my PowerPoint. I'm the opening band. No band
Right.
wants to play first, but you got to have someone's got to play first, or else the show never starts, right?
Right.
Because to me, it's as important to me that person who didn't see it as the person who did see it.
Right.
Because the person who did see it, they form an opinion, they go tell somebody. The person who didn't see it missed it. And my whole point of doing these things that I don't announce what I'm going to do is like, see, you missed this thing. And it was
Gotta make
weird
sure
and it
you're
was
there.
entertaining. Next time, come and see all the bands. Come and see the opening band that you've never heard of. Don't just come see your friend's band.
Right.
Come and see all the bands, because you might be surprised. And you might be,
Right.
that's how our band got popular, playing with other bands and people who actually came to see their other band and had to watch us.
That's
you know?
super cool.
And so I want to keep propagating that somehow.
Right.
Like, and it's like, is that tricking people into it? Kind of. Is it using psychology? I guess. But so when someone misses Get You Going, and someone tells them about it, and it's like, dang, I kind of want to see that. It's like, that's the win. It's not like getting someone to come. It's the person who didn't come and
Right.
heard something that they didn't go to was
Right.
cool. So it's like maybe they'll go see something that they don't know what's going to happen instead of what they do know what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So another thing, this is another thing that you did, and this was a while back, but you did an art installation, the Food Face.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what was that all about? Because I missed it.
Yeah.
'Cause I-
Dang, you missed it.
I missed it.
So,
What was Food Face all about?
so I'm a crazy collector, right? I collect almost everything. My website's called ISaveEverything.com.
Right. Like there's a place on your website that is just like pictures of your collections.
Yeah. And so I collect all this crazy stuff. But if I see something that I can't collect, I photograph it. So like my classic example is like a mannequin in a store window. And like I was never trained in photography. Like in the early 90s, a friend gave me like the K1000 film camera, right? And I was just like, she's like, here's a bunch of lenses and a camera like I'm not using. And so I like learned how to use stuff and I got so into it. Not so much as being like the best photographer, but just archiving and documenting everything.
Right.
And so there was a time at a party where I had these big glasses because I have like horrible vision, got LASIK now, and for some reason I thought it would be really funny and weird to like take meatballs from like this like crock pot of meatballs and I stuck them in my eyes, but like up under my glasses.
Okay, I've seen that picture. That's on your website.
And so, you know, like the Scorpions album with the guy with the bandages and the forks in his eyes or whatever. I was like kind of recreating that in a weird way. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, what are you people doing? We're like food face. And we're like putting food on our face. And so I had this whole photo series of just being at an event and putting some food on your face or whatever. And so it's one of those things that like, there was no creative genius of like, I conceived this idea and I'm gonna implement it in a visual form.
You just thought it was funny.
It was funny, and it was like, but just like any photography, whereas like I was anything, if I see a cool hairstyle or cool shoes or a cool mannequin, I'm just documenting. And so it was like I'm the guy at the party with the film camera, documenting the party. And this is before cell phones, right? This is before everyone documents everything.
Before everybody
now.
was taking pictures of their food.
Yeah, I was taking pictures of food on film. Right? For 25 years. And I did art shows of
for 25 years?
Yeah. And I did an art show.
So the food face stuff is 25 years?
The meatballs one was, for sure. And then, so I was like, oh, I want to be an artist in a gallery. And so like, I started pitching like ideas to galleries and started doing some like group shows. And so I got this food face show. So one of my first shows, I was like, I have all these pictures historically of weird food on the face. Right. And so I was like, I want to do an art show of it. And then I got this solo art show of
I mean, you got a lot of press on it too.
Oh, yeah. But I was digging through all my old scan negatives and I found the meatballs one and that was like the flyer. That was the classic. But it was also like I had other ideas of stuff that I hadn't done. So I actually did photo shoots for a lot of the pictures. And so there's one, and so I would get together with a friend. I was like, hey, do you want to do a crazy photo shoot with me? And they're like, sure. Like what? I was like, well, it's called food face, so you have to have like food on your face. And they're like, okay, cool. So like one friend, she's like, I want to have like a angel hair pasta wig. And then I was like, yeah, that would be cool. And we'll put like sauce on it. And then the sauce will drip. And they're like, yeah. So she made this like wig out of angel hair pasta, put it on her head, and then I cut her hair so that it like made sense. So I'm cutting hair, and then we put the sauce on, and we took cute pictures of like pasta hair, whatever, and then it starts dripping, and we put more on, and then so I took all these pictures of pasta hair, and then it's just like all over her face and her chest at the end.
Like it starts out really cute and then just turns into a mess.
Yeah, and so that was actually had two pictures in the food.
How did people
show.
respond to it?
I don't know. I mean, they're like,
but
this is the weirdest thing or like that. Actually, I sold several like because I kept bringing those back and they were photographs on canvas. I got into that wrapped canvas stuff, and so I sold some of those pasta angel hair ones like several times.
Wow!
And so it's like it's on people's walls in their kitchen or whatever, you know.
Right.
And then I did one called shrimp dental exam. We got like giant shrimp. Because you know in the dental exam where they put the thing in your mouth, it's like holding your mouth open. It's like, I can't talk, I'm drooling. So we got giant jumbo shrimp, and she held it. She was like, so it was like her and then a woman behind her that's her friend, and they're holding these shrimp. And I'm taking the pictures, and then she starts drooling as you would in the dentist.
Right.
Then that was another of my food face things. You know, so it was like. So it was like the idea was old, but it was probably, I think, maybe 3 of the images were historic food face images. But the idea was there, and then I filled in the show with all this new stuff. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it was like, and that's to me, it's like, I don't sit down and think of an idea. Like something comes up and I expound
and you just go
on
with
it. Yeah, and it's like
most people would go, that's a dumb idea. And you just go, yes, it's a dumb idea.
What could I do?
Let's just let it exist.
Yeah.
Let's let what would that dumb idea look like if it, took seed and germinated and grew, like if it fully expressed, what would it look like?
And the last ideas in that whole growing thing, like with the stuff I'm doing, the very last is like the best stuff.
Right.
Stuff I'm doing like the day before. Because it's like, I'm just like, I've got that rush mentality. I got to do this. Oh, I got one more idea I want to do, And at that show, like there was a company who made a bunch of stickers of food and people were sticking the stickers all over their face. And I had a sign spinner outside with a big sign that said food on one side and face on the other. And she was like flipping the sign up and spinning it around.
Like you got a professional sign spinner to come. That's hilarious.
And it was ridiculous. It was so fun. Oh, and then I had little waiter notepads. So all the names of the pictures,
ticket presenters or whatever.
Well, it was like the bill, and that was the catalog of what all the pictures were and the titles.
Right.
And then if you wanted to buy one, so like people come in and like I'd give them the thing and it had all the stuff, and then they could like, I want this, and so actually they had to fill out their bill if they wanted to buy art at the art show. So it was just like I created a restaurant of food face art.
That's
food,
so fun.
Art, and there was food there, and like. So yeah, I try to take things to the logical extreme and one step after that.
That's so fun.
I did a show called Bloodluster. Did you hear about that?
No, what was Bloodluster?
So that was probably like 2012 or 15 or something. I was like, okay, we're all about zombies, right? Like there's zombie movies. Everyone's dressed like zombies. We got the world's largest zombie crawl in Denver, and like. People are doing amazing makeup, zombie makeup, and like you watch CSI, right? And there's like a surgery, and I was I was like, there's so much blood, and it looks so real. The stage blood looks so real. I was like, does real blood even look real? I was like, what if I did a photo show of all people covered in real blood? And I was like, would it look fake because fake blood looks so real? Or would look real and like super disturbing, right? So I set out to do an art show of photography of people covered in blood.
Just like pig's blood or what?
No, human blood. It had to be human blood.
How'd you get human blood?
Each model donated their own blood for their shoot. So we took blood. So we showed. So I put an ad on Model Mayhem. So this is like a social experiment, right?
Okay.
Put an ad on Model Mayhem, says like. Bloodluster, or maybe I didn't have the name, but like blood photography or whatever. And I was like, I'm doing portraits of people covered in human blood, their own, taken by a registered nurse. Would you be interested?
And you had a registered nurse that took the blood.
And so it's like, would you be interested in doing a photo shoot covered in your own blood, basically? And like, would anyone answer this ad? A stranger, because Model Mayhem is like strange. Photographers and models can find each other, or whatever. And it's like I got several, because I was like, are any of my friends gonna want to do this? Because like even friends were like,
probably
no, that
not.
doesn't. Yeah, I don't know if I do that. But like I got several people to do it.
You actually got interest.
Yeah, and so like one woman, like so I met her in person, talked to her, like. Explained it, and I was like, what would you want to do? And like she had kind of like a southern accent or whatever, but she had tattoos and stuff. I was like, oh, she kind of looks like a pinup-y person. I was like, I'm thinking of like a picnic. And I was like, would you be willing to do like a picnic or something where like there's blood or whatever? So we did this picnic where there was like she's eating corn, like a close-up of her eating corn, and the corn is just covered in blood. She's got blood in her teeth. The blood's running through between all the kernels of the corn.
Yeah.
And then there was like, she's like biting into a strawberry, and the strawberry is like gushing out blood and stuff. So that one wasn't so much of a blood on. There was like stuff where it splattered on her and blood and whipped cream and stuff like that.
Like you got to build to it because you've only got so much blood.
Yeah, yeah. But then I did one that was like magician's assistant. And this woman was like she looked like a kind of goth magician's assistant, whatever. I was like, hey, I got this idea. And I was like, it's a magician's assistant where he's like soldered
and
in half.
And it really is cutting her in half.
Yeah, so we made her blood was like this cut mark, and there's a bloody saw. And there was a live bunny because her roommate had a bunny. And I had like magic hat and cards and stuff, but she's like lying on the floor and blood is just dripping off of her and she's like dead. you know? And I was like, but then,
That's so cool.
and so I had a friend who was like, yeah, that sounds like I wouldn't do that or whatever. And then like heard about some of the shoots that I was doing and stuff. And so she's like, I want to be in this photo shoot. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, what would you want to do? And she's like, I want to be covered in blood, head to toe, wrapped in a plastic bag. It's like a body bag, like like a murdered person, you know? I'm like, cool. So we got more blood in that one, covered her in blood, put her in a plastic bag and like closed it. And then now she's breathing and she's warm and the blood is sticking to the bag and her skin. And I was like, holy shit, this is like dramatic.
Right.
And the good news, the punchline.
Upsetting a little bit, too.
Yeah. But the good news is all of these pictures, like, really did look like real blood, and they were like super disturbing.
Oh, that's great.
So as opposed to what I thought they might look kind of
super fake yeah.
and orangey, and the longer the shoot would go on, the more congealed the blood would get, and so it just started getting like weird, you know, and like clumpy and
that's fascinating.
Yeah, coagulaty and stuff. And so you had this limited time that you could do the shoot, but it got to a point where it's like, oh, the blood's getting really good now,
right? And
so, but there again, it was like. Just a weird idea that once you start doing it, went further and further and further, and it's like, oh wow, some of this stuff is really cool,
right?
You know, and bizarre.
That's like the next thing I'm looking up when I get home.
Yeah.
So you brought your movie.
Oh yeah,
with you.
yeah. Which I feel like is like it's kind of the logical.
Is this your opus?
It could be the opus, or just yet another thing that it's all of the same tenets that I have always done, which is John Bonet's tricycle.
Right.
I mentioned I'm a crazy collector.
Right.
I lived in Boulder in the 90s. And so when this happened, murdered 6-year-old tot pageant queen, I lived I think 9 blocks away when that happened.
Right.
What were you doing when that happened? You were in Denver, right?
What year was it?
96.
96. So that would have been right around the time the band started.
Yeah, okay.
Because we played our first show in 97. So
and were you guys in high school still? Or you
yeah,
were
we
just
were in
out?
high school.
Okay.
If I hadn't dropped out, I would have been class of 2000.
Ah, okay.
So
that was right in the middle
so right in the middle of it. So I remember it going on, and I remember I remember seeing it on the news and things like that, but I didn't follow the trial super close. I just remember it was the big, a current affair story that was going on.
Right.
And I remember Catheter had a song called Fuck John Bonet. That was my favorite Catheter song, and they would never play it. Because they had grown past that at some point. I'm like, that's my favorite song.
Right.
You know? But so I remember when that was going on. So continue what you were.
Okay, so going back to Charles Manson. So these Manson murders happened, and that was the year I was born. So 1969. And so obviously, I found out about the Manson music, and I was reading about mass murders and serial killers and stuff in high school, and found the Manson music and stuff, and I was reading about it, and it's like Sharon Tate and a bunch of other people, which we won't give their names because they're not famous, were murdered by this horrific whatever. And it was like, I was very early on very interested in how things were presented in the press and rumors and people like, oh, Manson, he killed a bunch of people. It's like, well actually, he wasn't the one who killed the people, but and so the obfuscation of the media, right, and so Sharon Tate, beautiful, awesome. B actress maybe, but beautiful. I like her movies.
And wife of an accomplished director, a super famous
super
director.
Famous, right? And probably in the wrong place at the wrong time because of this house, and it used to be Dennis Wilson's house from the Beach Boys and the Manson stuff. So very interesting and weird, right? But it's like, why is Sharon Tate getting all this accreditation for being murdered?
But none of the other people there.
And it's like, it just feels so weird. And so fast forward a million years later, John Bonet, right? It's like people are murdered all the time, right? And not so much in Boulder, Denver, there's whatever.
And certainly not little pageant queens.
But this is different,
Boulder.
Right? This is, it's Boulder. People don't get murdered in Boulder. Well, they do, but they sometimes say that it was an accident or whatever. Boulder wants to have the squeaky clean image. People have money in Boulder because it's too expensive to live. I always lived in shitty basements because I couldn't afford a real apartment in Boulder. Right. And so, But this is like this this tot pageant, rich kid dies, and it's like international news.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is going on in the media? It has not changed.
Like people still
since
talk
the
about that.
60s,
Like John
yeah.
Bonet stuff still comes up.
And so I just got interested in it, just like I was interested in Son of Sam and Charles Manson and cults and Heaven's Gate and all these things that like people clamoring for information, anything, like because they want to know more, especially unsolved things. And so I'm part of the problem, right? I'm the one clamoring for the stuff. I want to know what's the other piece of evidence.
Right.
And so I'm just as hungry, and the media they got to have something, right?
Right.
And I was recording the news because every day there was something either came out or didn't come out, right? And I'm driving by watching Geraldo outside the house and all the media vans and the media circus. So I was into it, and also, I mean, I figured that was probably the parents that did it, right?
Right,
'Cause it
right.
just seems so weird but bizarre. Unsolved crimes, people love it. There's so many unsolved
True
murder,
crime's my favorite
true
stuff.
crimes, murder podcasts, unsolved, and
The
so
one show that my wife and I can always agree on, because we like such different things, the one show we can always agree on is Forensic Files.
ah, right,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
Forensic Files.
Dude,
They
that's our
take
go-to.
you for this ride along, like
Right.
what's the next piece of evidence? And so, but this was so bizarre. And then there's bands singing about it. There's people dressing up like John Bonet for Halloween.
Right.
Might have been me. But
Yeah, there's like
let's just
the dark gallows humor side of it, like the too soon jokes, because man, there's people always making jokes like the moment after something happens.
Yeah,
you know
the
what
too
I mean?
soon, is it too soon, whatever. And so I was following this case, just like half the world. I wasn't unique in that, but I was documenting it. I was buying all the tabloids. I was collecting it. It was,
So is this a
super weird.
documentary?
It's a documentary. That's John Bonet Ramsey's actual tricycle, and I own it. And I made a movie about it.
What?
Yeah. And so that's what I'm saying. This is like this is the pinnacle.
You own John Bonet's actual tricycle?
Yeah.
How did you come into that?
That's the first question everyone asks, but it's the one question I really can't answer. Because I've been advised.
You've been
as
advised
I'm working
not
on
to
the
say it?
movie. I've been advised not to really
Reveal your source?
reveal that story. But I mean, you'll watch the movie. You'll understand by the end. You can make your own theory about how I got it. But or did I make it all up? Am I that kind of prankster? As we've heard, I've had a lot of pranks about misrepresenting things to
Right.
get a reaction. Is that what I'm doing here? Like, you have to be the judge.
Right.
But that said, I also have candy canes from their front, like along the front path from the house. There's all these like yard art kind of candy
Ornaments,
canes,
yeah.
ornaments stuck there, like these like yard things. And I have come across those as well. And so in the movie, and I had this idea for this movie like a million years ago, like, oh, we should take this to a psychic. Because okay, when I acquired this, which was less than a month after the murder happened,
Right.
the candy canes and the trike, of course I was not really telling anybody.
Right.
Because it's this unsolved thing. If the cops came into my apartment, basement apartment in Boulder with like Barbies and like, Slayer albums and all sorts of fucked up dolls, and I have a computer in my oven. I had a non-working oven. I had a computer, like a dumb terminal computer that said "kill yourself" and blood on it, like stuck in the oven. Like that guy is the murderer.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, we
But
could take
before
him.
even interviewing you, they'd be like, "We found the murderer today."
Yeah, we got him. And I have all these tapes of the news of John Bonet Ramsey. I mean, it's like, so I wasn't really telling anyone, but I always thought, like, if psychics are real, right? And I'm a skeptic of psychics, right? Let's say that
Right.
at the outset. But if you could give them this object and don't tell them what it is, and they, some psychics, that they put their hand on something and like they see a vision or
Right,
whatever,
right.
it's like, that would be a funny movie because it would be a debunking of psychics. Because you got this thing that belonged to this superstar murdered child. Like, something's going to come out of this psychic if they're
Right.
And so but of course, they never did that. Years later, it was coming up on the 20th anniversary of the unsolved crime. So 2016, and there was a woman making a movie called Casting John Bonet. She was from Australia.
Right.
And she came to my house because like people are like, oh, she's going to be here scouting for her movie. You got to show her some of your John Bonet stuff. And so I showed her the trike. And so I was like, I really want to do this movie, but like, I've never made a movie. How do I make a movie? And so she encouraged me.
She actually encouraged you to do it.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, you should do this. That would be cool. And so I started just figuring out how to make a documentary. And like, I have lots of friends who've done movies and
this thing is already premiered, right? Like you've shown it did you like show it at the Mayan or where did you show it?
So I took it to Film Fest. I sent it to a bunch of film festivals. It premiered at Denver Film Fest. And actually, I did a short because I was working on
How
the
many
movie.
film festivals did it end up getting into?
One.
Just the Denver
Yeah,
film?
yeah.
People were like,
People were like, no, because it's so bright and pop culture as a film, and it questions us as a society about why are we even watching this movie?
Right.
It's an interview. I mean, it's a documentary of me and the origin story and what I've done with the trike, and I'm taking the trike out in public and making it famous and making a movie about it. So it's kind of self-referential.
Right.
And so it's like
it's all about the fetishizing of these characters that are like real people, you know, and like the objects like the trike.
And all the super goofy suspects in the case. Like there's a certain core of people who said like the Santa Claus guy did it.
Right.
Obviously, look at all this evidence, and it's like no, the photographer, the pedophile photographer.
Right.
And so there's all these goofball things. So I don't try to solve the murder in the movie. I talk about the pop culture that came out of it. Because we talk to a university professor in the movie who talks about when we take tragedy and we put it on TV, we watch a show about it, we try to figure it out. Like are we trying to make it okay? Is it right? It becomes pop culture and the too soon jokes and whatever because we're trying to figure out
compartmentalizing.
Yeah, we're compartmentalizing. We're trying to figure out how to deal with it. A child was murdered, right? That's the most awful thing you could think of. But it's like on the news every night. And we're clamoring for knowledge about it. So it's like, and so I'm pointing at myself in the movie too. Like I was like, we as a culture have a serious, like fucked up vision of entertainment.
Human beings, when they encounter tragedy, like really want to have it make sense and get on with life as quickly as they can. Like if someone dies, you know, the only people who are really going to suffer from the trauma of that loss in the long term are the handful of people that are in that inner circle. And the rest of the world at large is kind of looking to, you know, get some sort of resolution to it so that they can move on and not have to live with that existential disturbance that there is just like inherent chaos and malevolence in the world. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that, like, when you take a serial killer story, like, people are really fascinated about that, but they like to see that person's narrative is contained in a certain way.
Right.
You know, it's almost like putting it in a museum. It's like, yes, there's a mystery about it, but we've even contained the mystery within the container of this documentary or whatever it is, or docu-series on Netflix.
Right,
or
photography series, or
whatever,
anything. Yeah. And I mean, that brings up, you talk about death. Like when a famous person dies.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like Kobe Bryant and then all the other people that were in the helicopter.
Yeah, same exact thing. The Sharon Tate, the whatever. And it's like people are crying. People are genuinely I don't take away that grief. Like they are seriously grieving for someone they've never met, someone who's famous, someone who might actually be a rapist.
Yeah.
Settle out of court, whatever. But like people they want to have those feelings of grief for whatever reason. Or someone dies who the person didn't know that well, right?
Right.
But they want to post a message about it.
They want to
be
a part of it.
It's like, and it's like, I'm not saying that's not real grief. The person's sad that Kobe Bryant died, David Bowie died, whoever.
Right.
I mean, I know the feeling is real, that feeling of loss. But
to
like,
some people, there is genuine grief. We talked before we got on about feeling protective about when someone you love dies. We've talked about that feeling of getting protective of the way that person is remembered. Like, I remember there was a guy who used to clean up at Three Kings, this guy named Eddie. And he was an ex-con, and he was this dude that we all really loved a lot, and we watched him waste away from cancer, and he was a very sweet man, and I loved him very much, and I cried when he passed away, and I was very sad to see him go. But I heard someone make claims to what Eddie's perspective would have been on something like, oh, Eddie would have hated this, and I hate it too, and da-da-da-da-da, and I knew that was factually incorrect.
Right.
Like someone posted something about like, oh, I hate UMS, and I know that Eddie hated it too, and he would be so annoyed right now. And it's like, actually, Eddie loved UMS. He loved how much money everybody made. He loved watching the bands.
All the
this,
different
that, and
people.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He loved it. So I took offense to that because I became protective of what Eddie's perspective would have been because I actually knew him and I actually grieved for him.
Right.
Or like how I mentioned earlier that, yesterday was my brother's birthday, and I caught myself feeling protective about people remembering him. Now, fortunately, we made the T-shirts for him and everything. Like I had a couple different T-shirts made, so there was people that were posting things about the T-shirts, and people were very respectful and reverent for the most part. But there is this there's this way where people we saw it happen a lot after 9/11, where people like to associate themselves with other people's tragedy.
Right.
They like to kind of hitch themselves to the wagon. It gives them a golden ticket to, I don't know, vent some sort of sadness that's already in them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or like what we used to see at the bar is like after someone in the community would pass away, you would see a lot of people who were really just casual acquaintances of the person come into the bar sobbing and then just getting shit-faced drunk and destroying themselves and acting like a maniac and doing drugs. And it was almost like they had a golden ticket to act out this dysfunctional behavior that might not otherwise be okay for them to act out.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Grief. Like ticket to grief.
Yeah,
somehow.
It's the grief gives you a plausible excuse to act a certain way.
Right, which you probably were going to do anyhow.
Right, right.
You probably were going to get drunk that night anyhow, but now it's because of this.
Right.
Or whatever. But also, I mean, it's like you could see someone get run over on the street and you could feel real grief even not knowing them.
Oh yeah.
Right?
No,
so if it's someone you've met once, you can still have grief.
Yeah, I saw a bicyclist get hit on Sheridan once when I was riding home from a late night at work, and I watched this person pass away on the street, and without knowing who it was, without knowing anything, there was this just huge wave of just like, I mean, to me, it was less. It was sad, but it was more like existential terror. It was like it was a reminder that it happens to us all, and and sometimes it happens when we least expect it.
Right.
Dead is a real thing. It's not something that happens just to other people. And like, my wife worked for the Rocky Mountain Lions eye bank for a while, up until she was 7 months pregnant. And actually, and it is a grueling job, just driving around, going to hospitals and recovering corneas from bodies all day and night.
Wow.
I'm talking like Christmas Day.
You got to be there if you got the specimen is
You got to get it.
Yeah. Oh,
and their whole thing is to just try and get a gross amount of corneas. They're trying to get as many as they can, because that increases their rates of transplant and success. Like, I'm talking Christmas Day.
Yeah.
She's recovering corneas from children.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It's just
rough.
a super surreal thing. And it weighed so much on her. And one thing that she told me, and I'll never forget this, is she's like, that feeling that you get when you see a dead body, she's like, that never goes away. She's like, I got that with every single recovery I did, just that wave of just like, it's like a vacuum in a way.
Yeah.
Like, it's like you feel this just like, this absence of life. Like you feel this presence that is an absence of life in front of you.
Yeah.
And it's like to call it sadness or grief is like, I don't even think that begins to describe what that feeling is of like coming face to face with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I do get that people are like legitimately feeling sadness about other people, but I do think that there's a part of it that it's just like it's such a terrifying thing, and so we want to comfort ourselves by belonging to a group.
Right.
And the group is the grieving group. You know, it's like, here's this person in our community that is no longer here. Let's all get together and be super sad together and get wasted and destroy ourselves together, to kind of gather around the fire and not be so afraid of the things that are lurking in the jungle around us.
Right. Somehow you're commiserating or celebrating or the life or whatever. But yeah, yeah. And you know, we said like people grieve in different ways, and they really do. So you don't want to take that away.
Right.
But
You don't want to
like,
be disrespectful to somebody else's way of
but
grieving.
if it's superficial, it's weird. But my brother does hospice care.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so you're talking about the corneas and stuff. And so he takes care of people in home usually who are dying, right? And he's the last person that they knew. He's their last friend.
Right.
He became friends with them by taking care of them in their last
The
days.
very last friend they ever made.
And he really, it's really rewarding work because he's giving comfort to somebody.
But
and
all his friends died.
Yeah. And all of his friends die. His friends die all the time. And he can't really go on vacation because he wants to be there for them up until they're gone, you know. But there's two bad parts of the job. The company that he works for, whichever company it was, not any specific company, the company who is making this person or their family pay some ungodly amount of money for in-home care that the workers are not getting the huge percentage of, you know, but the company is basically taking all the last money from the people or the people's family until the day they die, you know, because it's like this expensive care. So it's like kind of predatory, right? And it's just like rules and just crazy. And then the families, right? The families are the people who he's going in and taking care of and feeding and bathing and doing all the stuff. And then when the person passes away, the family comes, and not every time, obviously, but they come and they're like, oh, how was he in his last days? And what was he saying? What was he doing? He's like, where the fuck were you?
Right.
Why is it me? This is my new friend from a month ago who just died, who I took care of. This is your person you've known their whole life.
Right.
Your son,
and they're like,
your mother.
Give me the cliff notes.
Yeah.
Wrap it
just
up
tell
for
me, like, yeah, what was he like what was his last words or what? I mean, it's just like, fuck you. Like, you know, and it's like they're reveling in the death, but not in the life or the care or like how we treat people while they're alive. You know? It's like
to them, it's like, here's another milestone in my narrative.
Right.
Here's another chapter in my story, and just like, oh, well, this year Dad died, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. No, he had a nice long life, and he was in hospice care, and I'm told that he went very peacefully, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Blah. Like it gives them dinner conversation, and people go, oh, you poor thing.
Yeah.
You know.
And so that's just so that.
But your brother, who's there at their last moments, is experiencing the real grief of like. That's fascinating.
Right. And, I mean, it's someone he didn't know all their life. He knew him for like sometimes many months.
He only knew them in that moment.
He knew them in that moment, and he was the person who was helping them. That's what makes the job worthwhile is the help and the care. But then that person dies. He can't really grieve. He's got all these other dying people. He's going to like, okay, I'm here from 2 to 4, and now I've got to go to the other I mean, it's stacked on. And so he's carrying a lot of what is other people's lack of grief or whatever, you know? And there's every different circumstance of why someone's not there, or maybe they don't have family or whatever. But like, just when that happens, it's like, that's like the absolute worst, you know?
He said
feeling.
that's one of the hardest things. Wow.
Yeah. And just, it's just so weird. And so, Yeah, so and so those kinds of things, amongst a lot of other things, is why I try to live for the moment, positively, mixing things up, making people
and making
think.
light of it, and you're something of a. Do you know what a heyoka is?
No.
So I found out about this from this Lakota dude that I met actually at the Dink comic convention, and he saw us play, and he started telling me about what the heyoka are, and they're basically like, it's like, in a tribe you've got your warriors, and you've got the medicine man, but then in Lakota and some other traditions, they have the heyoka are like the contrarians. They're like, there's the like famous depiction of the heyoka is like a native man riding on a horse backwards into battle.
Okay.
Like that's kind of the famous depiction of the heyoka.
Yeah.
And so it's like they're this very important spiritual, like this spiritual asset in the tribe, because they are there to kind of like challenge norms and challenge the perspective and get us to rethink things and satirize things and make people laugh and make people kind of scratch their heads. Like that's their job in the community, is being someone who is a celebrant within the group that is supposed to get people to kind of think about their existence a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's wild. That is wild.
It's cool
Yeah.
stuff. I really want to go to. He told me that to this day, there's still like heyoka ceremonies and things like that.
Wow.
And I want to check one out one of these days.
Yeah, that's wild. But
Yeah.
I feel like, I'm really trying to just get people to go a step out of their normal whatever.
Right.
Go to some place you don't go. Go see something you haven't seen or you don't know what. Or
Right.
or question yourself. What like. So I'm just.
I got to give this a watch.
Yeah.
So it's just all about the pop culture phenomenon of John Bonet.
Yeah.
The fetishizing of a dead little girl, man.
Yeah. And
That's crazy.
And it's. I think it's just it's interesting. It's also about collecting, because it's like it's an object, and it's like if you had
Right.
two tricycles, one of them belonged to John Benet Ramsey and one didn't. Why is this one? What about it? Like, is it because
Right.
like
It's like Jonathan Davis from Korn owns Ted Bundy's Volkswagen Bug.
oh wow,
And it's like, why? It's like horrific crimes happened in that
right?
VW Bug. Like that's not cool.
Yeah, that was
That's
ugh.
it's not cool, but it's also like I can
It
also
can be interesting
understand.
without being cool,
Right.
It's like, damn, that is fucked up.
It can be interesting without being cool.
Yeah, and that's why we watch the murder documentaries and the stuff. It's like Dateline, Forensic Files. Like somebody died for that show to be made, right?
Right.
Because it's about that. But it's like we're interested in it. And it's like, we're all going to die. We're going to have to go through that. Our loved ones are going to have to go through that if we die.
Right.
It's like, so dealing with it is people deal with it in every different way.
Right.
And so, wow. Ugh.
Yeah.
But I say in the movie though too, like I would rather have I say something like I would rather have the box of cereal that belonged to the murderer than the knife that killed the victim.
Right.
Because to me, the cereal is like the murderer ate the cereal and then they killed somebody. It's like
Right.
It was
This is
there.
their
It
normal
was
human
It
thing.
was the normal human thing. It was the witness
Or the toilet
to
seat
it.
that belonged to the killer. It's like
Yeah.
this person sat on this and took a dump every day.
right.
You
And
know,
then-
just
yeah.
like the rest of us.
right.
Here's the box. What kind of cereal did the serial killer
Right.
like? You know what I mean?
Exactly, the entendres.
Yeah.
So it's just it's examining all those things.
Well,
you
where
know?
where
And-
can people find the movie?
Yeah, so the movie it'll probably be streaming some point, but right now it's on Blu-ray. But also, no one has Blu-ray players anymore.
You should talk to Do you know who Groovy Newville is?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's got a show on American Horrors now,
Oh.
which is starting to go to some of the streaming platforms, and like Our Motion Comic has been on Groovy's show.
Oh, cool.
But you should talk to him and see
Yeah.
about American Horrors is a nonlinear streaming service, and it's starting to catch on.
Wow.
So you might talk to him. In fact, I'll intro you. You already know him, right?
Yeah, a little, but yeah, that'd be fun to just
I mean,
get a
if
idea.
get it out there in the world, man.
Yeah.
You know,
So,
get it on Amazon. Get it on the streaming services.
Yeah.
And stuff.
So JohnBenaysTricycle.com. And
Right.
I've actually gotten a lot of press about the movie and
what was the response to it at the film festival?
people who see the movie really like it. But like a lot of people don't want to see it. Like people who know me, like, oh, you made a movie, I want to come see it, and they really like it. And strangers who saw it because it's at the film fest. But like people on blogs and stuff, there's a lot of John Benet blogs, people trying to solve the murder and stuff. But like they're like, this is horrific. It's exploiting the child, and it's like, well, actually, you don't know what the movie's about, so it's exactly the opposite.
Y'all are exploiting the child by becoming obsessed with the pop culture phenomenon. You know,
or people say like, "Oh, I don't want to see yet another thing about John Benet." So I think it's hard to market it, but like once people see it, they really like it. You know, I made patches.
Those are really cool.
Yeah,
Thank you for bringing me stuff.
Yeah, and then here's enamel pins. Yeah, I'll probably get it streaming at some point soon. But also the Blu-ray is cool because it has like tons of extra stuff on it.
Right.
I did a book about all my collections. There was a big art show of like all of my collections. There was 8,000 objects in the art show, and we did a 100-page book of it.
That's super
And
cool.
so, but that's on the Blu-ray because it's about collecting. And in this art show of all my collections, the tricycle was there, but nobody knew what it was. It was just there. It's like, oh, guy has a trike, guy has a whatever.
Yeah, he's got all sorts of stuff. It just blends in with the rest of the collection.
Yeah.
So what's your website so everybody can find all your stuff?
So yeah, I'm at iSaveEverything.com.
iSaveEverything.com.
Because I try to do wacky events.
You got a ton. I mean,
art
there's information
shows.
about all your stuff on there.
Yeah. And then John Benet Ramsey or JohnBenet'sTricycle.com.
So
Google
and
is a
by the
great-
way, I missed the Warlock Pinchers reunion. Is that ever going to happen again? Probably not.
King Scratchy says he's retired.
He's retired.
Officially retired. He's like, you do whatever you want. I'm retired.
I
so
feel
now
like a
I'm
dick for missing
going
it.
on podcasts.
I feel like a dick for missing it.
Oh my god.
All
that
right.
was the funnest thing ever.
So, real quick before we get out of here, I want to give a shout out to some of our sponsors, real quick, and tie this in at the end. And then I got one thing that I want you to do that we do with all our guests at the very end. So, first of all, want to give a shout out to our sponsors. First and foremost, our most venerable venereal sponsor, Matula Plumbing.
Matula Plumbing.
Shit rolls downhill. Don't be at the bottom.
Oh my god, I'm right under it. Look at
Your
that.
number 2 is our number 1 priority. Your shit is our bread and butter. Master of Poopers himself, Angie's List, Super Service Award winner back in 2011. 1-1 was the only one that mattered. He'll wear the booties for you. Tell Jerry the boys sent you. Mutiny Information Cafe. This is a Mutiny transmission. Mutiny is everything, man. Books, comics, records, live events, podcasts, including this one. Great selection of cereals. No one has a larger selection of Torini syrups. Nobody. Head on down to Mutiny.
And magic.
And oh yeah, they do magic.
Yeah, open mic magic night.
Yeah, the open mic magic night. Dude, that gets brought up so much when
love
we're
it.
talking
I
about
love
Mutiny. People are like, and magic too. Yeah. Of course, the NugNation.com. This podcast and a whole bunch of other great content come to you from the Nug Nation studios here in Denver. The NugNation.com is where we feature all the Nugs and their wacky adventures through the town of Nugville. You can see the stuff we've done with Afro Man, Red Man, Nappy Roots, Scotty ATL. Who else? Jaron Benton. Jaron Benton was one of my favorite ones that we did. We're getting ready to drop a thing with Ritz here soon.
Billy Ray Cyrus.
Yeah, our music video with Billy Ray Cyrus, which is... So, have you seen it yet?
No.
Have you seen the Billy Ray?
No.
I'll send you a link to that
Okay.
too. It's hilarious. TheNugNation.com. Check it out. Flipside Music on South Tacoma Street in Denver, Colorado, over there on the rock block next to Blackout Screen Printing and the Keep Recording Studio and all that cool stuff. All the stuff you want, none of the stuff you don't. Life's short, make some noise. Flipside Music, it is an awesome place. Tell Ike the boys sent you. RocketSpace Rehearsal Studios, just off 27th and Larimer. We love RocketSpace, hourly rehearsal studios, fully equipped, clean, nice, friendly staff. Well, the places are clean and nice, and the staff is friendly, although I assume that the staff is also clean and nice. There's also a guy who works there named Jason Bonham, so that's cool. Yeah, RocketSpace, you ain't got to carry shit. Evergroove Studio in Evergreen, Colorado. That is our official recording studio where we are working on our next record. We're actually getting ready to go up there in March to record 20 new songs, and it is the most beautiful studio I have ever seen. In the Black Mountain region of Evergreen. Gorgeous views, and it's 70% solar powered. Go to evergroove.com. Hit them up about your next project. And last but most, I want to give a big shout out to all the people who back us on Patreon. Thanks to our patrons, we are able to do this podcast. We are able to fly Tony in and out for shows. We're able to go on tours. We're able to make our comic book, our motion comic. We're able to record albums. We're able to do so much stuff because a handful of people believe in what we're doing and back us on patreon.com/MFRuckus. In exchange, we try to take care of them. We give access to exclusive and early content. We put them on VIP lists for shows. You can get guest list spots, VIP parties with beer and food from time to time. Yeah, man, we love our patrons. If you are into that sort of thing, please go to patreon.com/MFRuckus. Now, all right. So now, first of all,
I got one thing to say if I can.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just actually started a podcast.
You started a podcast?
Yeah.
What's your podcast?
We don't even have a name yet, and we just put it on Buzzsprout just to see how it goes.
What's your podcast? Like, what are you guys doing?
So it's this guy Tom Banger who was a guy who did put on punk rock shows in Denver in the mid '80s. Mm-hmm. He was Tom Headbanger back then. He put on like the Misfits and DRI shows in Denver when there was absolutely no venues, you know. But he and I have known each other for a million years, and we just sit. He's in DC. I'm in Denver. We just talk on the phone, and like this, we're just kind of bringing up stuff. And so we've recorded like 2 or 3 or 4 of them. Well, only one of them's online. So if people look on my stuff, they'll see it. But this reminds me of it's just talking, but like all the stuff comes up. It's awesome.
Dude, I love it. I love doing this, you know, and it started out as just it started out as like a big commercial for the band, you know, just an extra piece of content that we were trying to make. But now it's like, it's become one of my favorite things in the world to
93 episodes, too. It's not like
93.
you're just trying it out. You've been doing it a lot.
We're going to hit 100 episodes next month.
That's
and
cool.
It's super fun, man. And Andrew, I just want to say, dude, I have followed you for a long time. I really appreciate the contribution you've made to music. I really appreciate what a nice guy you've been every time that I've run into you, every time I've met you. And thank you so much for coming and sitting down with me, man.
Thank you,
really
man. This has been super cool, super fun.
It's been great. So what we do every week is this won't be in the live stream version, of course, but in the audio version that goes out on all the podcast platforms. We do the One for the Homies shout out, which is Gordo, our producer, will look up any band that has stuff online and will play that track at the end of the episode so people have something to listen to while they're deciding what podcast to listen to next. And we always get, it's tradition that we give that honor to our guests. So on the spot, I'm going to ask you to give us the name of an artist who is out there working right now that you think deserves a little extra attention, a little extra love, a friend of yours, a family member, just someone that you've seen recently that you really liked, someone from the past that you think went unrecognized. And we'll put anything that we can find online onto the end of this episode. Or if you have something recorded and can send it to us. We'll do
Dang, that
too.
sounds cool. But so it doesn't have to be someone right now. Could be someone from any time.
It could be someone from any
Wow.
time.
Okay, I got it.
All right.
Friends Forever.
Friends
Do you know
Forever.
Friends Forever. Do you know them?
Oh, no, I don't know.
Okay,
Friends
so
Forever.
that was
They were on the Imposters album?
yeah. That's Josh and Nate, and they were Monkey Mania. It was Monkey Mania era. And Warlock Pincher fans in high school, you know, they were like that generation. But they did such amazing stuff. They would play inside a VW bus. They would play outside of concerts. So, like, they would go open up for the Melvins by playing in their van outside the show.
Right.
Like, well, right when the doors open or whatever.
Do they have stuff recorded? Like
Yeah.
beside? That's
Yeah,
great.
there's a documentary actually about them. They made recordings, but it was very much about the live show. So
Friends
maybe,
Forever.
Maybe a video would be more appropriate or whatever. But they let off fireworks. They threw stuffed animals. They created the chaos, and I felt like that was a next extension of the stuff that I was doing, or hopefully was an inspiration for that. And they just took it to such an extreme. You know?
Okay.
And they would even go on tour. Like I think they even toured with the Melvins, not on tour with
Not
the Melvins.
on the official
They
tour.
knew where the Melvins were
They
going
followed
next.
the Melvins
They're just
tour.
so they're like deadheads, but they're like actually performing outside of the shows.
That's awesome.
And it's crazy. And then, So to me that's an inspiration to me even when I think about it, because they did something that I didn't do. That was something. It was like, but it was something with those same tenets of unexpected. No expectations, but people remember it and they talk about it and like what just happened, we don't know.
Right.
So I think that
That's
Friends
awesome.
Forever, look them up.
All right, cool. So we're going to get Gordo to put a track by Friends Forever on the end of the episode, which will be available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, all the things, and of course our website, mfruckus.com. My guest today has been Andrew Novick from the Warlock Pinchers, Food Face, John Benet's Tricycle, ISaveEverything.com. Like, dude, this has been such a treat for me.
Endless.
I can't even begin to tell you. It's been
Super
so fun, man.
Super fun talking to you.
Thank you
man.
so much, man.
Awesome. Thank you.
So thanks all you for watching and listening, and we'll catch you next week on the motherfucking podcast. We out.
Dag, did somebody watch that for 3 hours?
People probably didn't watch it for 3 hours, but they probably
Oh.
no, they didn't watch it for 3 hours, but they I don't know.
My girlfriend just wrote. When did she write? 5 minutes ago. She says, "Holy fuck, 3+ hours." But I was literally captivated the whole time.
Oh, that's great.
But she's she's a fan of me, so
Yeah, so she has to say that.
yeah. Oh, but yeah, super cool, man. Because it's like, just bringing up this stuff and making me think about it and talk about it and stuff I haven't thought about in a long time.
Right.
And,
Well, that's kind of the idea of it. It's like you listen to the traditional rock interview show type of thing, and it's just like, okay, so when's the next tour, and what are you working on with the next album, and blah blah blah, and it's always in this short format. It's like you can't get into a story.
Yeah, that's news, right? Like give us the update of whatever.
The first half hour is just breaking the ice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But yeah, getting people to talk about stuff, and that's how people get to know somebody.
Right.
Not where they're playing next.